Alright, number 10, Batmite. If you've heard of the extremely weirdly named Mr. Mxyzptlk, then you have a small understanding of the reality warping imps who inhabit the 5th dimension. This Batman megafan is basically a small childlike imp who wears a loosely fitting homemade batsuit with a black lightning bolt symbol. But don't let his goofy looks trick you. He has nearly limitless magical abilities. He's not technically a hero, but he's also definitely not strictly a villain. A being of this level of power can't really be either because there's no way it would lose in whatever it wanted to do. He idolizes Batman and just wants to see him in action. So when Batman gets angry with him for being a nuisance, he usually sets things straight and just leaves, which is honestly kind of adorable. Number 9. Dino Cop. We have a few anthropomorphized characters on this list, but none of the others are dinosaurs. Dino Cop is from Earth 41, which is an Earth containing characters who are all pastiches of heroes from Image Comics. He is Rex Stegman, a humanoid dinosaur-like character who is also a police officer, supposed to be the DC equivalent to Savage Dragon. He is absolutely dedicated to preserving the peace in his undinosaur blue-collar worker way. He teams up with another superhero from Earth 41, Spore, who is supposed to be like Spawn, but more planty. I don't think his powers really matter too much when we talk about the weirdness of this character, but they are super strength. That's kind of it. He has increased stamina and is kind of pretty intelligent, but you know, nothing super. I think a dinosaur man hybrid police officer is weird enough to make this list on his own, so there you go.
Number 8. Ultimate Hulk. Let's be real, when I think of multiversal monster versions of the Hulk, I often think of Ultimate Hulk of Earth 1610, aka the Ultimate Universe. Here Hulk was less a hero and more just, kind of a brute. In fact, at one point the Ultimates, who are basically this Earth's version of the Avengers, even had to fight against, not with the Hulk. The Hulk would eventually go on to join the Ultimates team, I'll give him that, but let's not forget that he's a cannibalistic beast who also makes some of the most violent threats when he's angry. Even Bruce Banner wasn't as altruistic in this universe, initially hoping to create the next super soldier serum so that he might be able to increase his own strength and power. However, instead he created a Hulk serum, which turned him into the Hulk because he was all about testing that serum on himself. It's even implied that during his first transformation that he may have actually caused the death of Mary and Richard Parker, the parents of Spider-Man. Peter Parker, so yeah.
Number 7. Marvel Zombies. It's an entire pantheon of characters, from Spider-Man to Hulk to Captain America, but all zombified. The zombie versions of beloved heroes were first introduced in the pages of Ultimate Fantastic Four and became instant hits. In typical Marvel marketing genius, Marvel spun the zombies into their own book written by none other than Robert Kirkman. Robert Kirkman is the same bearded guy behind a television show you might know called The Walking Dead. The comics ran from December 2005 to April 2006. It starts in an alternate Earth called Earth 2149, where an unknown hero crash lands from another dimension. He comes with a quote, hunger, which infects the Avengers, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four, along with basically every other major superhero you can think of. It's intense, and the adventures of the zombie heroes usually have more mayhem than most mainstream comics do in their entire run. It's all about damage and impact, and oh boy does Kirkman deliver on that. Peter Parker eats Aunt May. I'm serious, look it up. After an episode of the Disney Plus series called What If Zombies, there were talks of Disney also creating a spin-off series based on and named after the Marvel Zombies, so keep an eye out.
Number 6. The Yeti. This Yeti is relegated to another universe because of the series it appears in, which was intended to be, good for young readers and children, and which was said to exist outside of the main continuity. This Yeti we are talking about here appears in Spidey Super Stories in issue 16. Oh boy. In this team-up book we see Spider-Man go on adventures that are more kid-friendly when it comes to reading, ideally therefore serving the purpose of helping kids learn how to read, which is important. The Yeti hails from Earth of 57780, and while he might seem like a monster by the end of the story, Spider-Man, also of Earth 57780, seems to have ascertained that the Yeti really is not a bad guy, but is just homesick. He's just stealing a lot of ice cream. So he attempts to help the Yeti by getting him safely home so he can be cold again. Yay.
Number 5. Morbius, the living vampire. It's Morbius' world and we're just living in it. He first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man number 101 in 1971. The story goes, in a desperate attempt to save his own life as he suffers from a rare blood disease, Dr. Mike Morbius turns to a cure that uses vampire bat DNA because of course he does. It mutates him into a half-vampire, half-human monster. It's Morbleclock out there, and Morbius was actually initially kind of a bad guy. He fought Spider-Man and Blade before becoming a vigilante justice sort of anti-hero who struggles with the insatiable lust for blood. He's also desperate to find the cure to his vampirism. Honestly, in the comics, Morbius looks way scarier and monstrous than the Laughingstock movie. I think it's one of those things where the cartoon and artistic medium is much better at portraying the monster than Jared Leto is.
Number 4. MCU Gargantos. Gargantos is one of the monsters from Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness that I thought, might be one of the big bads of that movie. Instead, I was wrong, and the beast was used simply as a distraction. Seemingly modeled after the comic book character Shuma-Gorath, Disney and Marvel decided against using the name of that character for copyright reasons, and so instead decided to use a name that solely belonged to them. Enter Gargantos. Although in the comics, Gargantos is less of a magical monster and instead is kinda like your typical multi-tentacled, one-eyed sea monster. In the film, it takes the combined efforts of Sorcerer Supreme Wong and Dr. Stephen Strange to defeat the beast, and Strange even pulls out some magical monster tricks of his own to stop Gargantos. While Gargantos appears in a multiversal film, him being based off of Shuma-Gorath would likely also make him a multiversal monster just straight up.
Number 3. Ghost Rider. Who could forget Johnny Blaze, one of the Ghost Riders set out to hunt down earthly baddies and drag them kicking and screaming to hell where they belong. The legacy of the Ghost Rider began in the pre-Marvel age with a ghostly cowboy who hunted the prairie of the American frontier. But the modern version is a stunt biker, Johnny Blaze, who becomes possessed by the demon Zarathos and becomes a flame-headed skeleton with a cool bike and fancy leather jacket, hunting down bad guys in the name of vengeance. At times, he's the bad guy himself, being the not polished hero that has no problem taking lives. At others, he fights with the other Marvel heroes to take down bigger foes. I mean, he looks badass, can we be honest here, and he's definitely one of my favorite Marvel monsters.
Number 2. Strange Supreme. Strange Supreme is the Dark Doctor Stephen Strange we see as is showcased in the Disney Plus What If streaming series in the Season 1 episode What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart Instead of His Hands. In this episode, Strange becomes obsessed with getting back Christine Palmer after losing her in a car accident instead of, losing his hands, because Christine was his heart, get it? Because her death is considered an absolute point in time, the spirit of the Ancient One returns to Strange to remind him that he cannot do anything to bring her back. Strange doesn't like that answer and is like, I'm still gonna do stuff, so he gets split in twain, with one half of him choosing to do whatever it takes to get Christine back, because the Ancient One's like, I'm not gonna let that happen. Just cut you in half. This prompts him to turn to the dark arts, absorbing various creatures and monsters from the universe in order to get as much power as is needed to reverse Christine's death. In the end, this Strange of the multiverse becomes more monster than man, defeating his other half by reabsorbing him and breaking the universe to bits when he disregards all warnings and brings Christine back to life anyways once more. It doesn't even work out well because Christine's like, dude, you're like super evil, I'm like not here for this.
Number 1. Shuma-Gorath. Quote, before all was, I was. Before time was, I waited. I fed on the screaming souls of the universe. I drank the spoiled milk of dead stars. I am the emptiness outside all understanding. I am Shuma-Gorath. Is a pretty sweet way to introduce yourself. His character design is next to none as one of the great old ones who first appeared in a 1972 comic called Journey into Mystery Volume 2. This tentacle monster more so looks like a freak of nature than a typical monster. He's the ruler of hundreds of dimensions and comes to the Earth realm millions of years ago along with the other old ones. Around 1 million BC, he was banished from Earth by a time traveler sorcerer named Sea-Sneg. It was witnessed by Doctor Strange, who hoped to defeat the Ancient One so his master didn't have to die, but obviously it never really works out like that. But then Shuma-Gorath reappears and becomes the main foe of Doctor Strange. While we can get into his whole villain arc with Doctor Strange, I would prefer to look at the other reality he appeared in with Earth 30847. He became an unlikely savior of Earth, and upon accepting that they thought of him as a hero, he ended up hosting a Japanese game show called the Super Monster Awesome Hour, which honestly, like, vibes.
Number 10. Gorgon. If you remember the weirdest DC Multiverse superheroes video, which you should check out, I talked about a pastiche of the Incredible Hulk in DC Comics called Big Baby from Earth Earth 8. He was part of a team called the Retaliators, who were supposed to be a joke version of the Avengers. This universe also had a team of villains called the Extremists, and on that team was a Dr. Octopus type character named Gorgon. While Gorgon did utilize technological enhancements, I think his octopus likeness comes in the form of his prehensile hair. The hair tentacles he uses and his role as a scientist mixed with his weight and oddly familiar glasses all come together to really evoke a Dr. Octopus likeness, which is just weird enough to make me double take. He is also familiar enough that I can't really put him any higher on this list, so there's that. Number 9. Dex Star. Or Dexstar, or Dexter, or Dexstar, Dexstarer. Cats can be ruthless, cold, and scary at times, I'll admit that. But while the Red Lantern of Sector 2814, Dexstar, is an irrationally rage-filled kitty, it's all because he loved his owner. Dexstar's origin shows the cat Dexter with his owner when she is attacked by robbers who broke into her home. While Dexter tried his best to scratch the attacker, he ended up ending the life of Dexter's owner. When the police showed up on the scene, Dexter was kicked out into the streets so as to not contaminate the scene. Now, 2 rascals from the streets found Dexter when he was trying to sleep, put him in a sack, and threw him into a river. Now that is one hell of a sequence of events, and all this happening filled the poor little kitty with enough rage that it caught the attention of Atrocitus, who called out to him and made him a Red Lantern. With this newfound power of the Red Lantern ring, the Rage Kitty exacted his sweet revenge on the hoodlums and flew to say goodbye to his owner one last time, saying, in his little cat language, "I find who hurt you, I kill. I good kitty." I love this cat, but I also wouldn't dare mess with it. Ever. Number 8. Power Girl. There have been many versions of Supergirl throughout the years. None were remembered as fondly as Kara Zor-El, the cousin of Superman. While Kal-El was rocketed to Earth as a child from a dying Krypton, Supergirl was sent out from Argo City as a teenager. She became trapped in suspended animation until she finally arrived on Earth, where she soaked up a ton of solar radiation. Now yes, Supergirl is powerful, but there is a more powerful alternate version of her in the form of Power Girl. Power Girl has all the powers and abilities of a Kryptonian and is pretty much just like Supergirl, with a major difference being she is older than her counterpart, and therefore Karen Starr, Power Girl, is far more powerful. Over the years she has evolved again and again to fit the continuity, but she's still considered one of the strongest DC superheroes. Power Girl has been able to knock out Superman in just one punch when she was needed to. She can stand up to Supergirl and even Wonder Woman in the heat of combat, and she's even been able to beat up someone as powerful as Darkseid. Number 7. Shazam. Billy Batson is just a wee lad who, thanks to the wizard Shazam, could transform into a powerful magical hero named Captain Marvel, or if you prefer, just Shazam. By saying his magic word, he gained an array of attributes including the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, the stamina of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the courage of Achilles, and the speed of Mercury. Shazam has proven himself to be nearly as strong as Superman, with the two having fought to a draw many times, with Shazam actually having an edge in the form of his magical abilities. Shazam defeated foes as powerful as Black Adam multiple times and went pound for pound, shot for shot with godlike people such as Hercules and the Spectre. And that's before we even get into Jokerized Shazam or even pre-Crisis Shazam, who had basically unlimited strength. Like so much so that he pulled the Earth back into spinning again. I don't know how it stopped spinning, it seems kind of like it would be impossible, but comic books, okay? He's been shown to be as strong enough to move planets and survive nearly the same amount of stuff as Superman, so I'm gonna place him here comfortably. Number 6. Wonder Woman. Gifted with the powers of the gods, Wonder Woman has many of the same abilities Superman possesses, including strength, speed, and durability. However, Wonder Woman's Amazonian training sets her a little apart as an amazing warrior. It's been debated for years whether Diana could beat Superman in a fight, and while she's shown to be capable of hurting him at the least, she doesn't have the same raw amount of power. Instead, Wonder Woman dominates her opponents through a combination of her special abilities, superior tactics, and special equipment given to her by the gods. But she has been elevated beyond this. When Diana was empowered with the World Forge and the anti-crisis energy at the end of Doom War / during Death Metal, she had enough power to shake stars and phase throughout time through sheer strength. She had displayed the ability to shrink an entire planet and was able to link everyone together and restored their memories properties as one history, as in all of DC's continuity. She has cosmic awareness, she's able to see multiple events during the war against the Batman who laughs at once, as well as precognition and retrocognition. She was crazy powerful for that time. Number 5. Superman Prime. The Kal-El, who lived to the 853rd century, survived as long as he did by literally becoming the living extension of the sun. He left the Earth somewhere in the late 21st century when everyone he cared about died, and traversed the entire DC multiverse, going beyond time and space, and has been said to have reached as far as heaven and hell themselves. He was created by Grant Morrison and Val Semeiks, and first appeared in DC 1,000,000 number 4 in 1998. Now, this version of Superman has pretty much all of the same general powers of his normal self, only Superman Prime remained in Earth's sun for 15,000 years, increasing his abilities to immeasurable levels. He is known to dwarf the might of even the massively powerful Kal Kent, who is himself more powerful than the gravitational pull of a collapsing star and is multiple times faster than the speed of light. But he is still kinda just Superman who can do a hell of a lot by just strengthening the heck out of it. Number 4. Elaine Belloc. Bet you weren't expecting to see this girl here. But Elaine Belloc is the successor to the throne of heaven, and that's quite something in my opinion. Elaine has got the powers of atomic manipulation, magic, immortality, omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence. While you may not expect it, she is one of the strongest inhabitants of the DC universe. Compared to other characters on this list, Elaine is a newer addition to the DC canon, as she first appeared in Lucifer number 4 in September of 2000. But despite that, she has quickly climbed the ranks of DC's most formidable characters, and that's before she gains even more power after Fenrir the Wolf de-lifes her father, effectively making her the ruler of heaven after the presence departs. Since she isn't really a hero and is more kind of just like both good and bad, she does align good more than not, and I found it kind of hard to find a proper place to put her on this list, so I'm gonna go with 4, and we'll suffer the consequences of my decision. Number 3. Captain Atom. Nathaniel Atom was transformed into Captain Atom in the 60s after being semi-forced to participate in a potentially fatal experiment sitting at ground zero of a nuclear explosion encased in an alien metal. The explosion didn't kill him though. What it did do was bond the alien metal to his flesh, giving him superpowers and throwing him 20 so years forward into the present day. The alien metal gave him incredible abilities such as flight, matter manipulation, energy manipulation, time manipulation, energy absorption, telepathy, spatial manipulation, quantum manipulation, force field creation, time travel, magic, and mind manipulation, and control of the quantum field. These powers have let him perform some insane feats, like creating a universe within the quantum field and later destroying that universe, fighting Superboy Prime, easily defeating a team composed of multiple versions of Atom, before absorbing them and creating an explosion powerful enough to destroy a universal space-time continuum. He is truly an insanely strong being, and I would be ashamed to not include him on this list. Number 2. The Spectre. One of the most powerful beings in the DC universe is the Spectre. He is the biblical god's spirit of vengeance. He blesses whoever his host is with nearly unlimited magical potential, flight, invisibility, and intangibility. The Spectre can inflict death with a glance, revive dead men, materialize in multiple locations simultaneously. He has molecular reconstruction. He can heal wounds with a touch and can teleport as well as alter his size, implying he has matter manipulation abilities. The power of the Spectre is so great it needs a human host to keep him in check, which doesn't really make sense. Jim Corrigan, Hal Jordan, and Crispus Allen have each taken control of the spirit of vengeance in order to enact their own versions of justice onto the world. One of the Spectre's most impressive physical feats is the fact he could engage the Anti-Monitor in hand-to-hand combat for control of all creation. It's hard to find heroes more powerful than the Spectre, but there is one. Number 1. Dr. Manhattan. When I began to look up just what John Osterman, otherwise known as Dr. Manhattan's powers and feats were, well, the list could kinda take up nearly half the length of this video. So let's go through some of them, shall we? After he was destroyed and reconstituted from the atomic experiment gone wrong, John has no need for food, sleep, or oxygen, and no longer ages and can regenerate from any injury. He has nigh omniscience and possesses an understanding of the workings of the universe on a cosmic scale. He has reality warping and matter manipulation powers, allowing him to end literally everything, which he foresaw himself doing, so he obviously has precognition even as far as a millennium, and can even see alternate futures. He has causality and time manipulation, which allowed him to return the metaverse to how it was before his interference and remove 10 years from the universe's timeline, creating the New 52. He obviously has time travel, which he's used to travel back in time and save Jor-El right before Krypton's destruction. John experiences all the reboots in DC continuity, and yet he remains unaffected, and additionally, John exists in every timeline all at once, meaning that he has duplication and dimensional travel abilities as well. He possesses elemental manipulation, creating a ring of blue fire, producing an oxygen field, creating water, and producing electricity. Saying he has enhanced senses is kind of an understatement, as he can read atoms, sense tachyons, knew someone didn't have cancer with a glance, and heard a heartbeat from someone else's womb. He can phase through things, create human life, made plants grow, teleports an entire crowd of people away. He has instantly analyzed and learned magic after being attacked with it, and absorbed energy from a Green Lantern ring and absorbed magical attacks. Dr. Manhattan is more than a god.
Number 10, Shame of Thrones. Weird, but in a great way. Because for this story, we are heading over to the alternate reality belonging to the Little Marvels. Over in the Infinity comic Giant-Size Little Marvels issue number 4, we get a glimpse into Dr. Von Doom's lair and his evil game night, which apparently happens every other Tuesday, according to Magneto. However, the whole issue consists of a tangent where the invited villains complain that Doom is the only one who gets to sit in a throne while they game, whereas they're all relegated, to normal seats. Doom argues it is because he's the most accomplished ruler among them all, and that he answers to no one. However, his mom has something to say about that. Vicky? Number 9. What if Sergeant Fury had fought World War II in outer space? I was literally going to just say that to introduce the story, but then of course it's already been said because that's the name of the story. In this comic, we get to see what it would be like if, in addition to the general opposition during World War II, there were also aliens involved, who wanted to, of course, invade Earth. As such, the Howling Commandos take to the stars to fight against German World War II soldiers in addition to alien invaders known as the Baytans. Did I also mention that Nick Fury is still smoking throughout this entire issue, even while he's wearing a space helmet? While some things would change in this scenario, it seems others would remain the same. How do you even smoke in a space helmet? That seems like it would be terrible.
Number 8. Rune King Thor. Thor is an incredibly powerful character who has been around forever, as I'm sure everyone knows. But after Odin passed away, Thor became the king of Asgard, and he sucked. He did a lot of unking-like things. But to fix all that, he uses time travel to go back and just reverse it all. But now Loki has orchestrated a whole thing, resurrecting Surtur and Ragnarok, creating new hammers and attacking Asgard, ending the lives of many significant Asgardians, and just being a real pain in the bum. Thor is visited by the personification of the Odin Force in the form of a little kid who tells Thor he needs to gain wisdom. So to do that, Thor follows after his late father and goes to the Well of Mimir, sacrificing both of his eyes and drinking from the well in order to gain the knowledge that Ragnarok is an endless cycle. He then goes to Yggdrasil, the World Tree, and hangs himself there until he actually passes away. Doing this imbues him with rune magic, which gives him knowledge of the future and the past and the ability to control the present. And he's saved by Odin's spirit before his soul can be claimed by Hela. He returns to Earth with both the Odin Force and this new rune magic. Using these forces, he is able to erase the man god from existence with a single touch. That's one of the most powerful beings in the multiverse that even Odin was afraid of. He defeats all the forces of Loki, including Loki himself. He recreates his hammer and uses it to literally destroy reality with a single swing. Number 7. Hercules during Chaos War. Hercules is an incredibly powerful Olympian who is on par with, if not stronger than, Thor. But one of his most powerful moments was during the events of Chaos War when the Chaos King attacked. Amadeus Cho becomes a god, but he's mortal and cannot handle it, so he transfers the power to Hercules. Now with this power, Hercules leads a team against the Chaos King. He's able to fly, teleport, and release energy from his hands and eyes. His strength was amped up to incredible levels. His footsteps created shockwaves, and he was even able to come out on top in a confrontation with the Council of Godheads, which is basically a group made up of the chief deities of all the different pantheons. He could summon Galactus and Eternity against their will, and defeated a Chaos King Zeus, who just defeated Galactus with a single punch. He could give others power too, giving all the heroes the power of flight. He could grow to the size of a planet to fight the Chaos King with his fists, eventually defeating him. But to close out the story, Hercules uses his power to undo all the crazy stuff that the Chaos King did, and he became mortal again. But damn, he was powerful. Number 6. Rachel Summers. Rachel here is from the Days of Future Past storyline, and she is another of the mutant children of Jean Grey and Scott Summers. She has access to the Phoenix Force and was raised in the Xavier Institute and becomes the partner of the future version of Franklin Richards. After she was kidnapped by soldiers who had taken out everyone else in her house, Rachel became a mutant hound, using her psionic powers to hunt down other mutants for the authorities. They branded her face with an irremovable pattern of tattoos to mark her as a hound and forced her to wear a leash. Rachel took out mutants, some of which were people she loved. Rachel's grief and shame from what she did as a hound and the deaths of her parents and friends made her a pretty dark character, even after she broke her brainwashing. She's one of the most powerful psychics in the entire Marvel universe, and that's the case before she became the one true Phoenix and had its cosmic powers. As Phoenix, Rachel's abilities are enhanced to their ultimate levels, limited only by her force of will and her imagination. She literally becomes the cosmic entity, the Phoenix. Number 5. Franklin Richards. When Reed Richards and Sue Storm had a child together, a whole bunch of cosmic tomfoolery went on, resulting in Franklin Richards, the baby, being born with powers to alter matter on a universal scale. So in other words, he can basically manipulate reality on a cosmic level, which is an insane amount of power for a kid to wield. He's put mental blocks on himself to help control this power, but that doesn't mean he can't still do a hell of a lot. Some of the things this guy has done include: when all the mutants were destroyed by Onslaught, Franklin resurrected them all and put them in a universe that he just created. When Abraxas killed all the versions of Galactus, Franklin resurrected him. He's also resurrected Galactus and literally made him his herald. Recently, it was revealed that instead of being a mutant, Franklin actually altered every cell within his own body to appear like he had the X gene to fit in a bit more with the mutants. There is even a fan theory that Franklin Richards controls the Marvel Multiverse to stop characters from aging throughout the many years they have been around, and it's honestly possible. Number 4. Doctor Strange. When looking at the rest of the characters on this list, it's kind of hard to see why the heck Doctor Strange is showing up here. And that's fair. Looking at his abilities in the MCU, and even the comics past the point of 2009, he's not that strong. But before that time, Doctor Strange was an incredibly powerful character. So powerful that Marvel needed to depower him. He could easily defeat pretty much any foe before this time. So basically, Doctor Strange's only real power is his ability to use magic and magical artifacts. But since he was so good at that, he could basically do anything he wanted to. Flight, time travel, telepathy, shields, astral projection, teleportation, all of these using spells and artifacts. He has survived being close to a star and has caused that star to collapse into a black hole. He has summoned cosmic entities and imprisoned and defeated the In-Betweener. He's altered the fabric of the universe. He's trapped the Beyonder and undone the things the Beyonder had done when he warped reality. He's broken out of a spell cast by the Living Tribunal, and he has even become Death. He's defeated Dormammu, Nightmare, and Shuma-Gorath on a regular basis. It may be surprising that he's on this list, but it shouldn't be. Number 3. Nate Gray. For a guy named X-Man, he's gotta be a powerful character. And he is. Nate Gray comes from the Age of Apocalypse timeline. He was created by Mr. Sinister using the DNA of both Scott Summers, Cyclops, and Jean Grey. There are a few characters who are a child of these two mutants, namely, there's Cable. Now Cable has huge psionic abilities, but because of being infected by the techno-organic virus, almost all of his energy goes towards keeping himself alive. Nate Gray is basically Cable, but without that limitation. When he first came into the 616 reality, he was able to hide himself from Cerebro, which is supposed to be impossible. He is described as being on the same level of Jean Jean Grey harnessing the Phoenix Force, which is one of the greatest threats the X-Men and the world has ever faced, and he is described as an Omega-level living god. He can read the minds of others, he can sense the emotions and histories left on objects, he can detect rifts in space and time, he can move into the astral plane where he can see the future, and after he had a bit of practice, he could even increase the power of other mutants. He has cured cancer, destroyed cities on the other side of the Earth during a nightmare, manipulated matter to a cosmic scale, and traveled through space and time. He is basically mutant Jesus. Look at him. Number 2. Adam Warlock. First appearing in 1967 in Fantastic Four number 66, Adam Warlock was created by the Enclave, who were experimenting to create a perfect human specimen. This made him super strong, durable, fast, and he can store and use huge amounts of cosmic energy to make him fly, release blasts, and all kinds of things, including cocooning himself to help him heal and regenerate. Now every time he does this though, he actually comes out more powerful than when he went in, and he evolves new powers. He is also able to use quantum magic, which lets him teleport, make force fields, and move at the speed of light, create wormholes, resurrect himself and others, has cosmic awareness, manipulates, removes, and judges the souls of others. He has a lot of powers. He's altered the evolution of beings, he's manipulated matter, turning Thanos into stone, and then he wielded the Infinity Gauntlet. We have had Mutant Jesus, and this guy is basically Space Jesus. And one of his biggest feats is completely embarrassing the hell out of Mephisto, Marvel's most powerful demon, in his own realm. He has accidentally destroyed the entire universe, including all cosmic entities except the one above all who had to fix it all. He does have an evil persona of himself though, called Magus, but we've gone too far, so I can't wait for Disney to completely depower him to make him incredibly lame and boring in the MCU. Number 1. Cosmic Comic Spider-Man. Sometimes Marvel will make a joke character or scenario and it ends up creating a character more powerful than any other character possibly ever. In How to Read Comics the Marvel Way, issues 1-4, the comic itself becomes a character, and it starts off trying to teach the reader how exactly to read comics properly. The comic follows Spider-Man in a conflict with Mysterio, who found the Cosmic Comic, the same one speaking to us, in the basement of the Natural History Museum. It allowed Mysterio to freeze Spider-Man in time in a comic panel, turn inanimate objects to life, and increase his size. Once Spider-Man gets his spider sense back, he realizes the Cosmic Comic is influencing events, so he grabs the comic, thinking it's one of Mysterio's tricks, and tears it in half. After realizing the error of his ways, Spider-Man and Mysterio begin trying to write their own comics to use the Cosmic Comic to make their comics become reality. Thanks to the Cosmic Comic, they end up fighting across time, altering history, and Peter learns of the fact that he is a comic book character, seeing all of his comic book publication history. Taking in all this info, he fuses together with the Cosmic Comic, basically meaning he can control reality within Marvel Comics, which I think is even technically more powerful than multiversal power. He prints the comic he created, which has him saving the day and winning the battle, and it changes reality so that that's the outcome of the fight with Mysterio. It's kinda nuts. Oh!
Number 10. Scarlet Witch. We know that Wanda in essence broke the universe when she erased all mutants from it, or at least almost all mutants, I think like 99% of them, by saying no more mutants. But did you know that this actually broke the multiverse? At least that is what was implied in X-Men Endangered Species. In this series, Beast is on a journey to try and basically fix what Scarlet Witch did, finding a way to reverse her magics or perhaps find a scientific cure in order to bring back the mutant population to what it once was. During his adventure, he mates with Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange shows Hank the repercussions of Wanda speaking the words, "no more mutants," and how it didn't just affect the main continuity of Earth 616, but also affected the entire multiverse as well. Doctor Strange shows Hank the effects of Wanda's curse on mutant kind to help explain why he basically cannot use his power to help Beast in his quest, as the complexity and reach of magic is basically too great for him, even for the Sorcerer Supreme. Whoa.
Number 9. Last Son. While the majority of characters given to us from DC's Dark Multiverse are alternates of Batman, thanks to the Batman who laughs in his Dark Knights, the Dark Multiverse is a place where everything can go wrong with anyone. Probably the most alarming of the Dark Multiverse alternates would be the dark versions of Superman, and the Last Son, in my mind, stands above the rest. This version of Kal-El came from a dark universe corrupted by the Darkest Night, and instead of crash landing straight on Earth from the destruction of Krypton, Superman's rocket got lost and exposed to the cosmic storm of a black hole. When he finally reached his destination, Earth, the last sun of Krypton was burning with the energy of 1,000,000 suns. It sounds super cool, and Last Son looks absolutely amazing, but his whole concept is based on Superman's fear of becoming overcharged by the sun, and his capabilities are through the roof. He's terrifying. Number 8, Robin King. Probably the most depraved, psychotic, and disturbing of the Batman Who Laughs posse would have to be the Robin King. Instead of becoming Batman, this young Bruce Wayne lost his parents just like every other, only it was by his own hand. This Bruce was depraved basically from birth, so much so that it even scared his version of Alfred Pennyworth, who still continued to protect the young Wayne. After the passing of Joe Chill and Bruce's parents, the young fella found that he felt mainly cheer from all that altercation. He was inspired by a robin singing and how the bird is known for taking over the nests of other birds. Under that ideology, he began to put together an arsenal and a utility belt, which he would then use to take out police officer James Gordon and Alfred once they were able to prove that Bruce was responsible for the passing of his own parents. Robin King then stuffed the Flash's mom inside Barry's ring, he took out the Arcane family and obtained the Rot, he somehow managed to take out Swamp Thing, and he got away with it all because everyone thought he was just some kid. This guy even obtained and then modified the anti-life equation, a manhunt consisting of Adam Strange, Balloon Buster, Enemy Ace, Firestorm, Hawkgirl, and Hawkman all fell to this Robin King before he was finally recruited by the Batman Who Laughs, and he even posed some resistance to that guy. All this from an untrained Bruce Wayne. It's too much. Number 7, Dawnbreaker. Of all the Dark Knights recently introduced in Dark Knight's Metal, aside from their leader, the Dawnbreaker stands among the others as one of the most creative and possibly terrifying combinations. This blending of Bruce Wayne with Green Lantern, while based on two heroes, is definitely not a good guy. After Bruce Wayne's tragic loss of his parents, the Green Lantern ring comes to him and grants him the powers of a Green Lantern, right there in the alley. Now, if you know Batman, you'll know that he has likely one of the strongest wills on Earth, even though that's not really talked about. So strong in fact that it allows him to overpower the programming of the Green Lantern ring and do things that Green Lanterns are not supposed to do, like using his monstrous hard-light constructs to take down criminals permanently, or like taking out the whole Green Lantern Corps and the Guardians of the Universe. Stuff like that. He is a crazy powerful version of Batman, and I think it would be really cool if someone could put him on the big screen, in a sort of superhero horror movie, or something like that. Number 6, The Drowned. Bryce Wayne was the Batwoman of the Dark Multiverse Earth 11, and this vigilante had a romantic relationship with a certain Sylvester Kyle. When Kyle lost his life to rogue metahumans, it flicked a switch inside of Bryce, and she decided to systematically take down every single metahuman she could find. The craziest thing is that she did just that, wiping out every single metahuman who walked on land. But Bryce didn't think about the metahumans of the sea. Just 18 months after taking out the last land-based metahuman, Aquawoman and the Atlanteans revealed themselves and returned to the surface from years of self-imposed exile. While they came in peace, Bryce had such a mistrust of anyone, especially these Atlanteans that were obviously also metahumans. When peace talks devolved to an all-out war, Bryce modified her human form with biochemical augmentations, like the ability to control water, breathing underwater, healing faster, and bolstering her muscular, skeletal, and bodily tissue density. She gave herself a kind of dark hydrokinesis which could corrupt those fighting against her into ravenous sea beasts under her command, and designed her own army of hybridized sea creatures called Dead Water, all of which was bolstered up by the trident that she pried from the cold hands of a completely decimated Aquawoman. She then drowned the world, and it was then that she was contacted by the Batman Who Laughs. Number 5, Cyborg Batman. Yes, there is a Batman-Cyborg hybrid who is part of the Batman Who Laughs Dark Knights, and yes, he is terrifyingly awesome. Murder Machine first appears in Dark Days the Casting in the Dark Multiverse Earth -44. In this world, this evil Batman cyborg comes about after the passing of Alfred Pennyworth in the Batcave by a group of Batman's villains. As Bruce Wayne's father figure and closest friend, Bruce took this loss hard, and he blamed himself. He asked Cyborg to make an Alfred Cyborg AI called Alfred Protocol in order to help Bruce like Alfred used to do. Unfortunately, like most AI in fiction, it went kinda mad with its directive of protecting Batman. It spread like a virus, took down all of the villains and then all of the heroes, and even took over Batman's own body since it didn't believe that he could protect himself well enough. And Batman just didn't want to be separated from Alfred, so he was totally cool with it. Number 4, Devastator. On alternate Earth -1, Batman and Superman were pals and everything was dandy. Until one day Superman changed and rampaged, turning on humanity. Superman took out almost everyone, and Batman tried his best to help bring his friend back. But once Superman took out Lois Lane and then cut off Batman's arm, there was really no going back from that point. Batman decided to inject himself with the Doomsday virus, turning him into the Devastator, powering him up enough to take out Superman but also making him lose all sympathy. He still retains all the knowledge of Bruce Wayne plus the fighting skill, and he acts as the muscle for the Dark Knights. Truly a monstrous and terrifying Batman. Number 3, Eradicator Lois. For this point, we are going back in time to the infamous death of Superman. When Superman fell in the fight between himself and Doomsday, it didn't hit anyone as hard as it hit Lois Lane. Well, in the Dark Multiverse, something curious happened. After some time passed and Lois saw the effects of a Superman-less world, she eventually traveled to the Fortress of Solitude to return Superman's cape. What she never expected was for the Kryptonian Eradicator to show up. This defender of Krypton is the reason that Superman does eventually come back, placing Clark in the Kryptonian life matrix that was supposed to revive Superman. In this story though, it takes longer than expected, and so, assuming that the revival was a failure, the Eradicator instead places the powers of Superman into the body of Lois Lane. Unfortunately, this is the Dark Multiverse though, and so this newly superpowered Lois Lane throws almost all caution to the wayside and uses her powers recklessly, saving the day, sure, but with no regard for collateral damage or repercussions. She ends wars, feeds the hungry, destroys the military-industrial complex, all that good stuff, but she also wipes out countless lives, including Batman's, and she's even responsible for the fall of Superman again when he does finally return. The whole story is pretty tragic, but that also makes it one of the best ones to come out of the Dark Multiverse, in my opinion. And number 2 is the Scarlet Witch. There was a whole era in Marvel Comics pretty much focused on how the Scarlet Witch is such an extremely powerful reality warping character. Now to be fair, she kind of became the villain during that time, but normally Wanda Maximoff uses her chaos magic for the betterment of others. But that's no fun, so let's talk about when she became an Avengers level threat. In Avengers Disassembled, after being accidentally reminded of her children, she brought back Jack of Hearts' body from the grave and used it to blow up the Avengers mansion, taking the life of Scott Lang. She made Tony Stark feel the effects of drinking even though he hadn't had a single drink. She made the Vision attack the Avengers with Ultron robots, causing She-Hulk to go into a rage, and then she made the Avengers fight an invasion of Kree warriors that she created with her magic, and Hawkeye sacrificed himself in that fight. She then created duplicates of the Avengers to fight them, and fast forward a little while, and she literally created a whole new reality where mutants were dominant and Magneto was the ruler of the Earth. And at the end of that arc, she revived Quicksilver, made Magneto's mouth disappear, and reset reality, but with 99% of the mutant population losing their abilities. I feel like that pretty much covers it all. And in at number 1 is Max Faraday. Most of us have heard of these reality warping heroes simply because of the crazy things they've done in their respective comic book universes, usually DC or Marvel, but I don't think a lot of people have heard of Max Faraday from the Wildstorm Divine Right series. I definitely didn't. Starting out as a pretty idiotic pizza boy who accidentally downloads the quote creation equation over the internet, that lets him inherit the near omnipotent powers of a god. Max is able to not just manipulate reality, but he can actually create reality through sheer force of will, and his powers didn't even take much of that will either. As long as he believed what he was doing, it could happen. He has been able to travel through time and to the furthest reaches of space. He has been shown bringing back those who have passed away, including himself, erasing the universe, creating new Earths, and when he actually passed away, tiny fractions of his power went hurtling through time and space and became the orbs of power that themselves could grant individuals with their own reality warping powers. Now, I only just learned about this character and wanted to share with you lovely people, so that's why he is in at number 1. Starting in at number 10 is Dr. Manhattan. Calling Dr. Manhattan a superhero almost feels kind of wrong, but I wouldn't call him a villain either. He's kind of like just a force of nature, or like a force of space and time. Honestly, a couple of the characters on this list do kind of fit into that category. I guess when your godlike abilities let you see all the events of your life simultaneously and the interactions between molecules, then your priorities are far and beyond the simple premise of good and evil, I guess. At the end of the Watchmen story, Dr. Manhattan leaves Earth and flies off to go and create life of his own. So that's the kind of power we're dealing with here. But as we're talking about warping reality, Manhattan is responsible for DC's rebirth. During the events of Flashpoint, when Barry Allen and Pandora tried to revert the Flashpoint universe back to how it originally was, Manhattan saw it all happening and interfered, removing 10 years from the timeline, creating the New 52 universe. He was blamed as the reason for DC trying to reboot their continuity. His molecular, atomic structure, time, and space manipulation all come together to let this character mess with our concepts of reality on the daily.
Number 9. Miles and Gwen married. I love this reality. It's one that might seem odd though when you think about what is actually able to happen here. In reality 8, two heroes from different worlds ended up in a relationship and they settled down and even got married. This reality is believed to be an alternate future of Earth 65, where Gwen hails from normally. Here, Miles and Gwen ended up getting married, settling down, and even having kids together. They are also both celebrities in this world thanks to their superhero status as both Spider-Man and Spider-Woman respectively. Their two kids also grow up to become superheroes, joining this Earth's multiversal superhero Spider-Verse team, the Amazing 8. The team includes the whole family, both Miles and Gwen and their children, Spider-Boy and Spider-Girl, as well as Spider-Ham, Spider, aka Penny Parker, an alternate version of Jerry Drew, son of Spider-Woman Jessica Drew, and an alternate Spider-Woman who is also an alternate Kraven, or possibly a member of the Kravinoff clan. Number 8. Earth X. This is an interesting one. Thank you to Zocker JHD for the suggestion on the part 1 in this series and for reminding me of this amazing world. Earth X is a really dramatic world with some really beautiful artwork from Alex Ross. Earth X was created by both Ross and Jim Krueger. In this reality, everything ties back pretty much to the Celestials, Deviants, Eternals, superpowered humans, mutants, Inhumans, even Mephisto ties back to the Celestials here. Here, Mar-Vell ends up acquiring power through Kronos. This grants him cosmic awareness, which allows him to see the full extent to which the Elders of the Universe and the Celestials were involved in manipulating the entire cosmos. He allows himself to die so that he can enact a plan to stop the Elders. Eventually, Mar-Vell is granted the Enigma Force, even in death, and sets out to stop the meddling of the Celestials and the Elders, planning to free all those who have died by killing the Elder Death. Because yeah, Death is an Elder of the Universe here. Number 7. Mangaverse. There have actually been a few different universes that involve manga, and in fact a few different Marvel mangas that I myself have stumbled upon in bookshops. I really want to read the Deadpool manga if I'm being honest. But for this list we're focusing on Earth 2301, also known as the Mangaverse. The main one, that is. The Mangaverse first appeared in 2002 in Marvel Mangaverse New Dawn issue number 1. Although I actually think there was an earlier version of it that did appear, but I think they kind of reset it and like changed the number a little bit. So yeah, it's been going on since the early 2000s though, which is quite some time. And also, what a time. I feel like that's when I started getting into manga, the early 2000s, so makes sense to me. Number 6. What if World War II was fought in outer space? A classic what if tale, one that imagines what if Sergeant Nick Fury fought World War II all the way up in space. And of course, instead of the fight being just against the Axis and Germany, the Howling Commandos in this issue are also taking on aliens. This alternate reality comes from the 1977 What If series in issue number 14. This is the first volume of What If. In issue number 14, the reality comes to be as the answer to the question, what if Sergeant Nick Fury had fought World War II in outer space? The aliens in question that they are also fighting here are known as the Baytans, who have joined forces with Baron Strucker. This issue seems to be inspired by a love of other prominent sci-fi properties of the time, including Battlestar Galactica Antarctica, and Star Wars, which are also both mentioned on the cover. Good way to get you to read the comic. They're like, do you like these things? You'll like this what if? Number 5. Marvel Anime. I don't know what's weirder, really. The mangaverse of Marvel or the anime universe, which also exists. That's right, Marvel made anime versions of some of their most famous characters. The anime universe did not last long though, only having one season that was 12 episodes long, because yes, this is an actual anime I'm talking about. It ran from 2010 to 2011. Honestly, I kinda wanna watch all of it after seeing only like a little part of the first episode. It is very anime, right down to the intro, and also some of this animation looks pretty good, I gotta say. The first episode is about Iron Man, whose origin is more in line with his MCU one than his comic book counterpart here. In this reality, Iron Man is basically looking to retire and is kinda looking into building armor suits that he could use to replace him. However, when the villain Scorpio appears on the scene, he is forced to take action as the hero, Iron Man. Number 4. Captain America married Iron Man. Or rather, I guess I should say Iron Woman? In this reality, Tony wasn't Tony, but instead was born Natasha Stark, being born a woman. Natasha would grow up to become the hero Iron Woman and would actually fall in love with Captain America, and eventually marry him. Because of the success of their romantic relationship, the first Civil War never happened in this reality. There was a superhero registration program, however, but no one argued over it, and it was actually started by this universe's Reed Richards. This Earth is known as Earth 3490 and is an alternate one that Mr. Fantastic glimpses while perusing various realities where the first Civil War had a different outcome. Number 3. Marvel Apes, also known as the Apeverse or the Monkeyverse. Monkeyverse. In this reality, all the heroes and villains of Earth that you are used to seeing are all apes or monkeys. Also, heroes and villains actually die in this reality. In fact, if a villain is captured and brought to justice, they are demanded to reform, and if they actually choose to refuse that, they end up being beaten by heroes until they are, well, permanently defeated, let's just say. Also, the Captain America of this universe ended up being frozen in an iceberg and replaced by Baron Blood. So in this reality, the invaders were actually all transformed into vampires. Years later, Gorilla Captain America is thawed and must join the fight against the vampires of the world. It's got apes, it's got monkeys, it's got vampires, it's got everything. Captain America teams up with the Ape Vengers and after defeating the vampire invaders, takes on the role of team leader. Number 2. Avengers Mech Strike. The Mech Strike universe is just an odd one because in this universe, all the Avengers operate with mechs. Oh, and they had to team up with Thanos in an effort to stop Kang. Oh, and in this reality, Kang wiped the floor with Thanos. When you think about it, all of these things are pretty weird occurrences. However, I will say I do like the look of the mechs in this universe. Truly, the designs here feel like something I want to own in a collectible form of some kind. I have some of the mech Lego sets from Marvel and Lego, and I feel like the Mech Strike reality in and of itself would make for a cool series of sets, or you know, maybe one giant set with all of the mechs in it. That would be pretty cool. The reason that the Avengers in this reality get mechs in the first place is because they figure out the best way to defeat Kang's biomechanoids is to suit up in their own vibranium mech suits that Iron Man dubs biomechanoid response units. Although I gotta be fair and also mention that T'Challa was actually the one to figure this out, so basically, good job Black Panther, you figured it out! Vibranium, it's the way to defeat them. Number 1. Marvel. What a weird comic. In this story, we get to see what happens when you take a bunch of inside jokes and try to turn them into a cohesive story, or something? I think that's what is meant to be happening in this miniseries, but don't quote me. This miniseries is confusing, even for advanced comic book readers like myself who have read tons of comics at this point. In this comic, a lot of strange things happen, but it seems it's all done to make fun of the Marvel and DC universes, the whole superhero genre in general, and the distinguished competition, aka DC Comics. However, that doesn't mean that anything here makes sense. In fact, I can't make sense of almost any of it. This alternate reality takes place in the future in the year 5002 AD. Here the AOL company basically becomes powerful enough to lead the planet, I think. People can also seemingly karate chop meteors as they fall from the sky, and eventually we travel back in time to discover that Wolverine started off the whole human race after evolving from an otter. That's really what happens in it, I think. That's what I got.
Number 10. Nezha. The Devil Nezha is a more recent villain, appearing in Batman Superman World's Finest number 2 in June of this year, 2022. Originally, he was a Chinese warlord, first appearing in the 16th century BC. He was killed and then resurrected with a potion by his father, who he then dispatched. Through magic, he ended up becoming a huge threat to the world, and then thanks to a group of ancient heroes, was locked away in a magically sealed prison until the modern era, when he managed to create his own spells to escape. He then began possessing villains and eventually heroes, using them to try and take over the world. He's extremely difficult for even a powerhouse team like Batman and Superman to take on. Superman even used a device to send him to the Phantom Zone, and this guy said nope, and broke back into the Earth's dimension. Superman had to take Nezha into his tomb, locking it from the inside, and then use that same device to send himself to the Phantom Zone, closing the portal and reappearing outside the tomb, using the tear in the world and the Phantom Zone's reality that Nezha created to get back to the other heroes. I really hope that wasn't too confusing. I think it was, but just read this story. Batman and Superman fused together into a singular hero. It's super cool and super worth it.
Number 9. Larval Earth. Larval Earth is one of the names given to the homeworld of Spider-Ham. Here, all superheroes and supervillains are anthropomorphic creatures. This world is also similar in its style to classic animated slapstick cartoons such as Bugs Bunny. In my book, the cartoon physics involved here also makes Spider-Ham one of the most powerful Spider-Man alternates around, as he can pretty much survive almost anything and never really has to fear dying. This Earth is designated Earth 8311. Number 8. The Cancerverse. The Cancerverse is a reality that almost threatens to take over the rest of the multiverse, if you can believe it. In this universe, life finally beat death, which was completely eradicated. Now, while this might sound pretty good on paper, I mean, not dying sounds pretty great, in practice it actually was not so great. This is because of the manner in which it was eradicated, and also because without death, there is nothing to keep life in check, so it kind of runs rampant and becomes terrible. The universe as a result became corrupted, basically turning into a living corpse. This reality came to be because Marvel's Captain Marvel made a deal with the Many-Angled Ones to cure his cancer. As a result, this universe ended up being infiltrated by the Many-Angled Ones, who are basically like the elder gods of Marvel Comics, and they bent the entire universe to their will. Number 7. Marvel Zombies. While it might seem kind of atypical to pick Marvel Zombies for this list, it still is a world that I cannot believe exists. It's so terrifying. What's more, I can't believe this is a project we could be seeing reimagined as an animated or even live action series, as Marvel did announce that it would be coming to Disney+. That's right, we're supposed to get a Marvel Zombies series, I believe. Of course, I haven't really heard anything since that announcement that it was going to be coming and that it would be written by Zeb Wells, but I'm still super intrigued by the idea even of this adaptation. Marvel Zombies is a surprisingly gruesome, brutal, and bloody world in Marvel Comics, so it's definitely a weird one. Number 6. Loom World. Loom World is an interesting place. One, this is actually known as Earth 001, which is odd because the number 1 would imply it's more original in its existence than other Earths, including the main comic book continuity of Earth 616, which, you know, is the main one, so you'd think that would be one. And it's also the home of the Inheritors, who are basically cosmic multiversal energy vampires. However, it also kind of makes sense that this is considered Earth 001. Ashur and Gaia, powerful gods, once resided here along with many other gods and goddesses. Earth 001 was then the nexus of the multiverse. They tasked their daughters to basically come up with a system that they might use to map out the multiverse, since, you know, that was the nexus. Their daughter, Shathra, created the Great Hive, while their daughter Neith created the Great Web. Between the two, Neith's design was preferred. However, this caused Shathra to rage. Becoming consumed by her jealousy, Shathra turned monstrous and became focused on devouring the protectors of the multiverse, who we'd come to know as spider totems. That's the story of the Spider-Verse. Well, not entirely, but that's a part of it. Number 5. Magical Girl. Not the name of this reality, but it's what I'm calling it. The original Penny Parker is already a wild enough and super cool character in the Marvel Multiverse. But of course, Marvel had to go even further with this alternate version of Spider-Man by also making an alternate version of this alternate, turning her into a Magical Girl? In Marvel's Contest of Champions, there is an alternate version of Penny who is said to hail from Earth 23. In this reality, she met a magical creature which granted her powers, turning her into a magical guardian and warrior. She fights against evil with the power of friendship and love. Sound familiar to you? Initially, the Earth she hailed from, Earth 23, was also known as the Mangaverse, which would make sense, but the number for the Mangaverse would actually later be changed to Earth 2301. So now Earth 23, I guess, is just like another Mangaverse, but only in Contest of Champions is a thing. Number 4, Ruins. Probably one of, if not the bleakest Marvel universes in existence. Ruins leaves me reeling every time I return to it. What can be said of this reality that I haven't said already? It was made to be kind of the antithesis to the normal Marvel fare, the opposite of the main continuity, if you will, and really, it did succeed there. No power comes without some level of disturbing sacrifice or tragedy in Ruins, which is what makes it so terrible, but also, in a way, kinda great because it is very different. I don't know if it's different in a good way though. Number 3, Doctor Who Universe. Doctor Who actually exists in the Marvel Multiverse, if you can believe that. This is because back in the 80s, Marvel actually published a series based on the famous television series of the same name. The comic was known as Doctor Who Monthly. The universe in Marvel that the Doctor exists in and hails from is known as Earth 5556. And while Doctor Who may now be a property whose comics are published by Titan Comics, the fact still remains that because Marvel did have the rights in the 80s, technically the Doctor does exist in the ever-expanding Marvel Multiverse. Somewhere out there, the Doctor's running around, working on timey-wimey, time-traveling stuff, which is pretty wild to think about. And within that series itself, other alternate universes were also explored that are likely also tied to the main Marvel Doctor Who universe, the continuity, the Earth of 5556. So in a way, there is like a Doctor Who multiverse that exists within the Marvel multiverse. Multiverses on multiverses. And there you go. There's a single multiverse at least that exists within a multiverse. Woo! Number 2, Hostess Snacks. If you can believe it, there is a whole reality based off of the advertisements in Marvel Comics. That's right, that's a thing! The Hostess Snacks advertisements. This is a wonderful world where heroes simply use snacks to defeat their villains, who are often all just kind of riled up because they're hungry. That tends to be part of the themes of the stories often. Sad, really, but I get it. When I get really hungry, I know I definitely feel like a pull towards the dark side is coming from within my stomach, and I am drawn towards committing crimes. I have to resist. I reach for that Hostess snack. I'm like, I feel better. In this reality, heroes would use various Hostess snacks to appease and often redeem their enemies. Sadly, not every character here lived a happy life, and the golden sponge cake alternate Spider-Man of this reality did end up being one of the many who was killed during Spider-Verse by the evil inheritor known as Morlun. So sad. If you aren't certain what an inheritor is, they're the cosmic energy vampires I was talking about earlier with Loom World. In fact, the Earth and realm ends up as their headquarters after they force the Master Weaver to do their bidding. The reality of Earth 001, not the Hostess Cakes reality. Although that would be pretty funny if they were like, you know what, why don't we just chill here. We got all the Hostess snacks we could need. Too bad we don't eat them because we're energy vampires. We really only eat like spider totems, but yeah. Number 1, America's Best Comics. This one was actually super interesting to me, as it actually ties back to some comic book history, which I personally really love diving into myself, so I'm gonna take you on a journey with me. This Earth is known as Earth 10 in the Marvel Multiverse, but I'm still not sure if it's ever been like officially designated as Earth 10, so this may be actually an unofficial alternate Earth mentioned outside of Marvel. I mean, normally we have a temporal reality number or a temporary reality number when it isn't official, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I did some research into this and I was only able to find out so much, so if you know more, share with me in the comments. Earth 10 is what I could find this world designated as, official or not, as being the home of America's Best Comics, which was actually a Wildstorm imprint created by Alan Moore, which is pretty crazy to think. Now Wildstorm is an imprint at DC, but before Wildstorm was its own thing, and then America's Best Comics was an imprint there. America's Best Comics had multiple series under its umbrella, one of them being, get this, a comic called Top 10, which was not a series about this channel, but instead a unique take on a police procedural, which took place in a city where everyone had superpowers. A sort of like citywide kind of retirement community for superheroes from across the multiverse, across the omniverse you might even say. Among those spotted there was Marvel's famous Wolverine, whether the Wolverine from the main continuity or the Wolverine of Earth 10 or the Wolverine from somewhere else, we don't really know. The other interesting thing is that DC characters also apparently appeared, although I'm not sure if any of the characters to appear from the big two, at least not initially, were actually official, or if they were just characters that looked very similar, but you know, we never really said their names. DC would end up acquiring Jim Lee's Wildstorm, and with it Alan Moore's imprint of America's Best Comics, or ABC as it's sometimes referred to. This was controversial as well at the time, as Moore had actually sworn at that point to never work with DC again, but apparently Lee had only found that out after he had made the deal with DC. Fortunately for Lee, Moore wasn't too bothered by the decision and managed to accept it and kind of roll along, even though it went against what he had initially said. He was able to move forward from it. America's Best Comics, or the ABC universe as it is often known, still apparently exists today as the alternate reality of Earth 25 over at DC, which definitely makes sense since, you know, they kind of also bought that, and the alternate world of Earth 10 over at Marvel, which, as I said, I'm still a little, I don't really know what's official and what's not. Woo! Now I need to go back and read top 10. Sounds super cool. Number 10, Undead Brother Voodoo. This version of Brother Voodoo hails from Earth 666, ooh spooky, where he is part of the Undead Avengers team. While still technically a hero, he's also still technically a monster. The Avengers of Earth 666 are all considered members of the Undead, with each of them technically being some kind of monster, some version of undead, if you will. Jericho Drumm in this universe appears to be some kind of poltergeist-like ghost from his appearance here. I don't know if he's specifically a poltergeist, I just think of him that way because of his glowiness. I don't know, reminds me of the movie Poltergeist. This team, including the ghostly Brother Voodoo, make their first appearance in issue number 33 of the Secret Avengers series, where they tangle with Secret Avengers members Captain Britain and Clint Barton's Hawkeye of Earth 616.
Number 9, Groot. Before he was the mainstay lovable space ent in Guardians of the Galaxy with a raccoon-shaped compatriot, Groot was actually an evil, monstrous tree. He first appeared in Tales to Astonish number 13 in 1960. The tagline in the comic itself was, quote, "Where Groot walks, death follows." He was also entirely obscure before being thrust into the pop culture fandom when Marvel decided to turn their C-list team, Guardians of the Galaxy, into a phenomenally massive success. He was originally a throwaway monster, and his original comic, before 2012, was worth $2,868, which isn't small by any means, but after the movies premiered, it was worth $19,000. In the comic, Groot belongs to a species called Floral Colossus, although they're also just called Groots too. During his early life, the Floral Colossi rule over Planet X, and Groot was an outcast amongst his people. He became friends with the inferior species called the Undergrowth, a fungi-like species also on the planet. Groot is eventually forced to flee his homeworld after he kills another Colossus while defending an Undergrowth. Before the movies, Groot also appeared in 2 other comics, one being The Incredible Hulk, where he more so resembles his original appearance rather than the huggable tree we know today. The Hulk comic released in 1976, and then lastly he was in Annihilation Conquest number 6 in 2008. It was the first appearance of Groot as his modern rendition, smaller, skinnier, a bit more approachable than the Godzilla-style tree we knew before. He also joined the Guardians of the Galaxy lineup in this comic alongside Star-Lord, Drax the Destroyer, and Rocket Raccoon.
Number 8. Prez. Prez Rickard, a teenager born to literally become president. He was the youngest president ever elected thanks to the lower eligibility age in his comic book, Prez number 1 in 1973. As the young president, he fought legless vampires, a right-wing militia led by the descendants of George Washington, and evil chess players. His powers include advanced hand-to-hand combat, leadership, political science, and a healthy dash of charisma. His mother, Martha, another DC Martha mom, was his vice president, with his sister becoming his secretary and his Native American friend Eagle Free being appointed as head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Honestly, a pretty strange character, but also super inspiring, especially for younger readers, I'm guessing. Number 7. Uncle Sam, the spirit of America, bound to a talisman created by the founding fathers in an occult ritual, who would take physical form by merging with a dying patriot. And he needs you and your money, Pretty please. He lives as long as America does and has taken part in every American conflict. He was the Minuteman in the Revolutionary War. In the Civil War, he split into two, Johnny Reb and Billy Yank, and in 1870 he officially became the Uncle Sam we all know and recognize. He's fought in World War I and World War II. Unsurprisingly, Uncle Sam's powers are proportionate to the United States' faith in the ideals of liberty and freedom. And that list of powers is long, so of course, I will struggle to list them all out for you. Possession, immortality, interdimensional teleportation, invulnerability, limited clairvoyance, super leaping, size alteration, superhuman reflexes, superhuman speed, superhuman stamina, and last but not least, superhuman strength. Oh, and most importantly, he can detect the whereabouts of patriotic objects like the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. So watch out, Nicolas Cage. Number 6. Canterbury Cricket. After The Flash rewrote history in Flashpoint, this interesting character came to be in Flashpoint The Canterbury Cricket #1 in 2011. Jeremy Cricket, not to be confused with Jiminy Cricket, I'm sure, was a university student and con man until the Amazons attacked the country of England. He takes refuge in the Canterbury Cathedral but was tracked by an Amazonian soldier. He begs for his life from God when boom chicka bow, a flash of light appears caused by boo booms dropped from the Amazon ships. And when the dust settles, Jeremy has become the giant anthropomorphized cricket. Honestly, it's kind of terrifying. He looks like the prawns from District 9. Has anyone seen that movie? Anyways, as the newly dubbed Canterbury Cricket, Jeremy had become a patriotic hero, fighting for England until his last cricket chirp. Truly the best representation of the nation. America gets Uncle Sam, England gets a cricket. Number 5. Flex Mentallo. I mentioned the Doom Patrol in the last video, but we didn't actually talk about any of their members. We honestly should. One member, who I think deserves to make it onto this list, is Flex Mentallo. Flex here has the mysterious and hilarious power of muscle mystery, which allows him to alter reality by flexing different muscles. For example, flexing his scalenus minimus, Flex has the ability to survive in the vacuum of space for an extended amount of time. His other powers include enhanced senses, mind control, precognition, reality alteration, superhuman durability, superhuman strength, and telepathy. He is a close friend of Danny the Street, who was also in the last video, and his reviews on Google note him to be sweet and helpful. He first appeared in Doom Patrol in Volume 2, number 35 in 1990, and I think my favorite piece of art is the one with the title of Hero of the Beach, with someone in the background going, it's Flex Mentallo. Number 4. Dog Welder. Now look, weird isn't always pleasant. Unfortunately, for all of us, Dog Welder is about as bad as he sounds. He's a crime fighter, yes, a do-gooder, who haunts and maims evildoers by welding no longer living dogs to them. Dog Welder is a mysterious and demented member of Section 8, a superhero team, and he first appears in Hitman number 18. He keeps his face hidden behind a welding mask, and we never learn his true identity, but he seems to live in an alleyway that he sets traps for animals in. He also seems to have an endless supply of dogs of the afterlife to stick to people's faces. Even though he is apparently a hero, I think we can all breathe a sigh of relief knowing he met his demise in Section 8's final battle, and we don't need to see him again, ever. Alright, let's move on. Number 3. Matter Eater Lad. When an alien race has all their food infected by microbes, instead of going extinct, as you might expect, they evolve to be able to eat unlimited amounts of any form of matter to survive instead. Yes, welcome to Planet Pepto-Bismol. Oh, sorry, no, just Bismol. Home to Legion of Superheroes member Tenzil Kem, better known as Matter Eater Lad. The 15th member to join the Legion, Matter Eater has an ability you just wouldn't think would be useful. But if you get stuck inside somewhere, I can guarantee you want this guy on your team. He can eat through literally anything due to digestive enzymes. Thanks to how comic books just are, this ability has become more and more useful and in very random ways. For example, Bismolians don't possess any other superpowers really, but the ability to eat tons and tons of anything and digest it in literally seconds apparently translates into food energy that can give them, oh I don't know, super speed for example, or like when he ate through a whole asteroid in minutes. I just don't want to imagine how his bathroom breaks go. No thanks. Number 2. Liesel Pond. The Green Lantern Corps, actually every Lantern Corps really, has members of all different shapes and sizes. But what utterly baffles me personally is knowing the Green Lanterns have a super intelligent, justice-seeking smallpox virus on their roster. Assigned to Section 119, Liesel wasn't really able to join the other Lanterns in team meetings on the Green Lantern world, for the same reason your boss asks you to stay home if you've got a cold. The Green Lanterns aren't trying to get sick. sick, really. Liesl Pond's partner in Sector 119 was Remus. Because Remus was a fatal victim of Despotellus, who is also a sentient virus, but part of the Yellow Lantern Corps, so evil. Despotellus infected Guy Gardner, and wanting revenge for the attack on her sector and the loss of Remus, Liesl Pond entered into Guy, and the two battled with Liesl Pond, defeating the virus and capturing Despotellus, who Liesl brought back to Oa, the Green Lantern Corps doctor Saranik Natu, to work on a vaccine for. Number 1, Red Bee. When I think of all the animals that would make good sidekicks or super pets, bees are not my first choice. Think about it. As soon as they sting you, that's it. You need another bee to replace that one. Well, ain't it just the fitting coincidence that the trained bees used by Red Bee are a species of bee that don't die when they sting people. Not wasps, though. They're bees, okay? Not wasps. Richard Raleigh, the first Red Bee, was a superhero during World War II that used a weapon that fired a sting shot. Ouch! And inside his utility belt, he carried a swarm of bees that he would use against villains. Again, someone tell Nicolas Cage to watch out. He first appeared in Hit Comics #1 in the 1940s. The second Red Bee would be his great niece, Jenna Raleigh. This Red Bee used 2 mechanical bees that fire electricity, a tech suit, and was mutated by alien insects to produce pheromones that she can use to control her bees. At least that makes more sense than training a colony of bees. Number 10. The Flash. One of the most recognizable superheroes in pop culture, the Flash is perhaps one of the fastest beings in DC Comics. While Barry Allen is the most well-known iteration of the character in the comics, there are many other versions, but Wally West is arguably faster than the former as the Scarlet Speeder. In 2009's The Flash, the Human Race comic series, West's version of the Flash reached something called trans-time velocity, which exceeded any speed theoretically possible in science. As a speedster, the Flash can easily travel well beyond the speed of light, which gives him the ability to time travel. This makes the character one of the most potent DC superheroes who can manipulate time to his advantage if need be. The ability to do this is indeed extremely powerful, but he isn't the hardest hitter nor the most durable. So while he is worth mentioning, he is not really powerful enough to make it any higher compared to others on this list. Number 9. Martian Manhunter. I think it's incredibly easy to overlook Martian Manhunter's incredible capabilities. Yes, he is more well known for being a telepath and a shapeshifter, but this guy packs a hell of a punch with the Martian abilities of phasing, Martian vision, and density alteration. Now, his probably most powerful form was when he became Furnace, completely negating his weakness for fire. But Furnace was a villain and therefore cannot be on this list. But in DC 1,000,000, we get a John Johns who leads a war against Darkseid and gets him to surrender to the Source Wall, becoming trapped inside of it. The Source Wall in return gave John one wish. His wish was to become one with Mars, meaning John became a living planet while maintaining his multiversal telepathy and his genius intelligence. We don't get to see much of this version of John, but we can guess a lot of things about this version. Firstly, his weakness to fire is probably non-existent, because I mean, people gotta make fire on the planet, you know? We can probably assume John keeps his other Martian abilities to a degree as well, and there's also the possibility that the passage of time has increased those natural abilities considering he's defeated Darkseid. We can also assume he would now also have the powers that usually come with being a living planet, like weather manipulation and control of the elements. He can control the sands of Mars to an incredible degree too, so there's that as well. Number 8. The Magic Lantern. So take Shaggy from Scooby-Doo and give him the powers of Green Lantern and you've got the Magic Lantern of Earth 47. When it's groovy, when it's grim, we hum the living guru's hymn. When other lanterns lose their shit, we keep the Magic Lantern lit. I'm sure it's not the only thing that's lit. I wish I could just make this point a bunch of the stoner Green Lantern quotes. Hostility is for squares. Get with the blueprint. Are we groovy? Or do I gotta kick your non-Euclidean alien butts into the galaxy next door? The Magic Lantern is the Green Lantern to the Earth 47 Justice League, known as the Love Syndicate, whose members include Sunshine Superman, Shooting Star instead of Batman, Speed Freak, Brother Power, and the Geek. And they first appeared in Animal Man number 23, and were expanded upon in the Multiversity Guidebook. And every time I see them, I just wanna be a part of it. Number 7. Danny the street. Yeah, no, I think this is the wildest concept for a hero I have ever heard of. In case you didn't clue in, or for that matter, actually didn't believe it, Danny the Street is a living sentient street who can teleport to any city in the world. He was first introduced in Doom Patrol Volume 2, number 35 in 1990, and his main purpose and drive in this world is to bring happiness to those who inhabit whatever city he is currently at, giving those who have nowhere to go a place to rest their heads. It's nice. He likes to cross-dress and dress himself in nice pink frilly decorations on some of his buildings, including weapon stores. He eventually became the headquarters of Doom Patrol. At one point, he grew to be Danny the World, and then he was deconstructed down to just Danny the Brick, and was even just the humble Danny the Alley at one point. Even saying that sentence makes me feel like, what am I doing with my life? I'm talking about awesome sentient streets. Mom would be proud. Number 6. David Dibble. David Dibble dibble-dabbled in some kind of dubious scientific debauchery which decidedly turned him into Dig Dabby. Turned him into Big Baby, otherwise known as Behemoth. Hailing from Earth 8, where there are characters that seem to be DC's parody for Marvel characters. As part of the Retaliators, genius alternate name for the Avengers, Behemoth is basically the Hulk, turning from a scientist into an extremely strong monster. Only the unfortunately named David Dibble, instead of turning into a green savage beast, turns into a giant blue mega baby. While he used to have a dumbed down intelligence when transformed, he has managed to recover his intelligence over time, just like how Marvel's Green Goliath did the same. The baby part of this is probably the strangest part, but it does reflect how Hulk basically acts like a tantruming toddler when he transforms. Number 5. Etrigan, or Etrigan, or Etrigon, or Etrigan. He could be considered really cool or really weird, honestly. Etrigan rocketed to an Earth of eternal twilight from the doomed planet of Camelot. Who does that sound like? Maybe another hero who rocketed to Earth from another planet that starts with a K? They sound similar because Etrigan is an alternate version of Superman with quote-unquote overnatural abilities. From Earth 13, a planet of the supernatural and occult. Etrigan fights evil in Merlin's name alongside the League of Shadows as the Super Demon. Together, the League of Shadows faced off against an invasion of super vampires. And later, Etrigan became part of the Supermen of the Multiverse, targeted by prophecy, and allies with them to come up with a plan to free the other alternate Supermen. A demon Superman is weird, but he won't be the weirdest alternate Superman to hit this list. Number 4. Yankee Poodle. I think I could effectively choose any one of the characters from the animal universe of Earth-C for this point, but of all the characters a part of the Zoo crew, Ali Cadabra, Captain Carrot, Little Cheese, none really make me say, what? Quite like Yankee Poodle. Gossip journalist Rova Barkett, an anthropomorphic poodle, see what I did there? Would moonlight as Yankee Poodle, a superhero with the powers of magnetic manipulation that for some reason allowed her to shoot semi-solidified electromagnetic blue-colored stars with her right hand, push things away, and generate red and white stripes with her left hand in order to bring things to her. I don't know. If she put these powers together though, she can generate highly destructive magno-blasts. But for me, the best use of her power is she could travel by forming a ramp of stripes in front of her while propelling herself along it by shooting stars behind her. No, I didn't make any of that up. Just so we're clear on that. Number 3. Robert Rogers. This one has got a fun little twist. So, back in 2002, DC teamed up with Stan Lee of Marvel Comics fame, and together they released the Just Imagine series, which is basically, why don't we let Stan Lee come and make a bunch of characters with the ideas of DC characters? It is actually honestly a great idea. One of those characters ended up being Robert Rogers from Just Imagine Shazam number 1. And yes, he is Stan Lee's Shazam. When I tell you he is absolutely nothing like the regular Shazam, I ain't kidding. I mean, other than saying Shazam to activate his powers. For starters, he is not a kid. He is actually an agent with Interpol, and he is assigned to the tough agent Carla Norell, who together go to India to hunt down criminal Gunga Khan. Secondly, he is empowered by the wizard Merlin to hunt down Morgana Le Fay. And finally, when he yells the word Shazam, he transforms into a giant, hairy, red-fanged creature with a necklace of bones. Gosh, I love Stan Lee. Number 2. Milkman Man. The DC Universe Wiki says that Milkman Man is an imperfect copy of Superman. Excuse me, DC Wiki? This is an improved copy of Superman. All that calcium, strongest bones you've ever seen. I I bet. In JLA/Doom Patrol Special, the Doom Patrol has discovered that an interdimensional corporation called Retco has been stealing stories, reconfiguring them, and repackaging them for new markets. Retco has embedded itself into the current continuity, using the radioactive milk of psychic cows to quell the more dangerous impulses of the Justice League and turn them into heroes safe for the masses. That is literally the quote from the official summary. I am not even joking. Milkman Man has all the same powers as the famous Kryptonian superhero, only he's a milkman, and central part of the Community League of Rhode Island, a sinister group of pleasant-spoken normal folks. Please just do yourself the favor of reading this story and trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Number 1. KFC. Okay, it's weird enough that we have Colonel Sanders in the mainline continuity, but after his adversary Colonel Sanders takes the memory of all but the second of KFC's 11 herbs and spices from Sanders' brain, he is visited by Colonel Arla Sanders of Earth 11, who relays some information. 1. Apparently, every Colonel Sanders variant in the multiverse is close with the Flash of that universe, which is weird. Number 2, she remembers a different herb and or spice from the recipe, meaning every alternate Colonel will remember a different herb or spice, which is weirder. And number 3, with the help of her Flash and her cosmic treadmill, they're going across the multiverse to form the Multiversal team of Colonel Sanders, which is the weirdest part. There's Colonel Gaslight, Colnell from Kingdom Come, the future Colonel Ladd, Bizarro Colonel, Teen Titans Colonel, Comrade Sanders, and a Wild West Sanders. But my absolute favorite, and one that should make absolutely no sense, and if you really think about it, is kind of sick and twisted, is the anthropomorphic Chicken Sanders from the post-apocalyptic Earth 51, whose second line is literally Bok! Appetite. What the bok? Number 10. Hyperion. Hyperion is basically Marvel's first ever answer to DC's Superman. There are a few different versions of Hyperion from across the Marvel comics, but as a brief summary, originally he was from Earth 712. He was the last surviving member of the Eternals, and he comes to Earth and is raised by a family called the Miltons. He takes the name Marcus Milton. Eventually, he moves to Cosmopolis, becomes a newspaper cartoonist, and joins the Squadron Supreme. Yes, he is basically Superman. There's a story where he does battle with an evil clone version of himself created by the Grand Master. There is also a King Hyperion who basically destroys all the most powerful beings in the universe and takes over the Earth. That's obviously a villain, but it just shows how astronomically powerful this hero can be. The version of Hyperion who has most recently shown up is the Hyperion from Earth 13034. His Earth was destroyed by an incursion and he's pulled to 616. But what are his powers? Well, he is strong enough to hold two colliding universes apart for a short period of time, so there's that. He has super speed, durability, and stamina. He can fly, he has X-ray vision, heat vision, super intellect. I promise this isn't a list of Superman's powers. Number 9. Cosmic Iron Man. Tony Stark as a god with his great sense of humor should be fantastic, but it's honestly a little scary. After Iron Man is imbued with the power cosmic, he becomes the Iron God. And one of the first things he does is do battle with the also power cosmic powered Korvac. These two are literally throwing moons and planets at each other during their fight. That is, until Iron God transports Korvac to a destroyed universe and fights him until the cosmic entities show up and take Korvac away, leaving Tony to see what he does next. Iron God's goal is to make the world into a paradise, to fix all of its problems. He knows that his past attempts to do this haven't gone too well and that the other heroes will likely try to stop him. But he can use the power cosmic to do whatever he wants, and since all of his ideas for helping the world were trapped in his mind, he shares his intellect and ideas with the entire population of New York, just to start. This plays out in some interesting ways. A couple stops arguing and begins thinking logically, for one. A kid at a baseball game starts talking about background radiation, and the villain Big Wheel decides to solve traffic issues using quantum mechanics. The only problem is that Tony isn't exactly the kind of guy to fully think things through or consult with others before he does things, and that also transferred to other people. Number 8. Prometheus. Heroes and villains with no powers always seem to be some of the most powerful. It's strange. Take Prometheus. After seeing his criminal parents pass at the hands of police, he vows a vendetta on any form of justice. A vendetta that would push him to be able to defeat the whole Justice League single-handedly. He shot the Martian Manhunter with a dart that turned his power against him and set him on fire. He infected Steel's armor with a computer virus which commanded the suit to damage the Watchtower. He hypnotized the Huntress into unconsciousness. He attacked Green Lantern with a neural chaff that rendered his ring useless. He trapped the angel Zariel in limbo. He tricked the Flash into believing that he had planted motion-sensitive devices that would explode if the Flash used his powers, and he defeated Batman in hand-to-hand combat. That's probably the most nuts thing on this list. His origin is very similar to Batman's. After his parents were dispatched from the mortal plane, he would travel the globe training and becoming the ultimate combat machine. But he also attended the top universities, learning as much as he could. He eventually sets up a base in the Ghost Zone, and from here, he built an armor that could download information on any opponent's fighting style, kind of reminiscent of Taskmaster's ability. He is kind of crazy capable, and his vendetta on any kind of justice plus his Batman likeness just makes him kind of a little strange to me, but also terrifying. Number 7. Earth 17 Superman. On Earth 17, superheroes are a product of government experiments. The Superman of this universe, Overman, was the first, with the other superheroes being spawns of his DNA. Now that may be weird, but that ain't the weird part. He also doesn't really seem like a villain yet, does he? Well, after contracting a disease, contracting a disease from another person, yes, like that kind of disease, he goes insane and destroys the Justice League and reduces his world to rubble. He then gets his filthy paws on a doomsday boom boom that he intends to use on Earth 17 and wipe it out. The Crisis on Infinite Earths destroyed this reality, just like DC tried to destroy such a naughty Superman story, even having different iterations of Overmans who were different, like an Overman who became allied with the Axis powers in World War II. But the internet never forgets DC Comics, and people like me exist to remind everyone of the things you published into this world. I am sorry, sort of. Thanks for the content. Number 6. Mr. Mxyzptlk. Look, I talked about Batmite when discussing heroes, and he wasn't even really a hero. So how can I not mention the first 5th dimensional imp in this video? Plus he's got a fun name. Mr. Mxyzptlk is a reality warping imp obsessed with Superman, who, just like his rival Batmite did with Batman, simply seeks to annoy the hell out of Superman and just prove he is smarter than him. Which is good, because he has a level of power that in other hands could cause the entire end of the multiverse. More on that later though. He can do almost anything imaginable if he wishes it. And his only weakness really is being convinced or tricked into saying his name backwards to send him back to the 5th dimension, which, if you're trying to say it correctly, is honestly a superpower in and of itself. Clitopazixum. I got it. Number 5. Emperor Joker. Mr. Mxyzptlk has an extreme level of power, like I said. Also, like I said, if this power fell into the wrong hands, it could be potentially reality ending. Now, what hands could be worse than the psychotic hands of Batman's arch nemesis, the Joker? Well, that's exactly who gets the power in the Emperor Joker storyline. Mr. Mix gets bored and wants to give Joker 1% of his power, just to see the tricks Joker is able to pull off. But instead, the Joker tricks Mr. Mxyzptlk into giving him 99.9% of his power instead. Joker uses this power to rewrite all of reality to become his sick, twisted dream world. He eats the whole population of China out of a Chinese food container box. He keeps everyone stuck in a time loop, including Batman, who he introduces to the afterlife over and over every day forever. Oh, and he also turned Flash into a slow-moving obese man. Superman, the Spectre, and Mr. Mxyzptlk, being the only ones who can remember the former world, tried to do something about this all-powerful Joker. But that's just the problem. He is all-powerful. He destroys all of reality, but he can't bring himself to destroy Batman fully. And because of this, he loses control of his power, allowing the Spectre and Mr. Mix to steal it back and fix all of reality. This story it's pretty nuts. Number 4. Condiment King. When the villainous Condiment King came on the scene, it was literally on the scene, as he appeared in the animated Batman TV show from 1992. One of the best, honestly. Condiment King was Buddy Stantler, a comedian who was brainwashed by the Joker into becoming a villain who wields condiment squirters and viciously horrible puns. I knew you'd catch up to me sooner or later. How I've relished this meeting. Come, Batman, let's see if you can cut the mustard. Diabolical stuff like that. The puns get even worse in the comics, with his real name becoming a pun on its own. Mitchell Mayo. He isn't taken seriously by anyone. His weapons don't actually project his condiments at a speed fast enough to do anyone harm, but they sure are inconvenient, leaving nasty stains in your superhero costume. On the other hand, he does potentially have the ability to be able to cause anaphylactic shock if he is battling someone with an allergy, right? Number 3, Monsieur Mallah and the Brain. Monsieur Mallah is described in his wiki as a militant, super-intelligent French gorilla. The Brain, on the other hand, is described as a genius French scientist and master criminal who exists as a disembodied brain. So, those two descriptions are interesting enough on their own, but when I tell you the French militant gorilla and the disembodied brain are an item together, I think that just elevates the whole thing to a different level. Together, they are the primary leaders of the Brotherhood of Evil, who were villains to both the Doom Patrol and the Teen Titans. They both appeared in Doom Patrol 86 in 1964. Now, Brain was once a scientist who experimented on the gorilla who would become Mallah, which would increase Mallah's intelligence. An accident injured Ernst, and Mallah had to remove Ernst's brain and place it in a technological holding thingamajig to keep him alive and be able to communicate. The two are almost always together, with Mallah carrying around the brain. Hey, look, I don't judge. You find love where you find love, but as a concept for supervillains who lead a team of supervillains, you gotta admit, it's pretty odd to say the least. Number 2, Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. Let me repeat that for all those in the back who may not have heard. Animal, Vegetable, Mineral, Man. I don't really have a problem with 2/3 of that. I just get really hung up on the vegetable part. Is that weird? Sven Larsson is the man who claims that title. And while it is a completely ridiculous one, it is actually pretty fitting. Sven fell victim to an experiment of his own making, which allows him to transform into any animal, vegetable, or mineral, either partially or fully, although he very obviously likes to do a bit of all three at the same time, which is an odd choice, but hey, I just work here. Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man first appeared in Doom Patrol 89 in August 1964, and he is an enemy to the team, which makes sense given their weirdness. But Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man here has a vendetta against the Doom Patrol's leader, the Chief, who he believed once stole an invention of his. An invention that, funnily enough, is the only way of stopping Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. But he didn't even do that, so I don't know. Look, it gets weirder and weirder, but I gotta move on. Before I do though, Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to get out of my system one more time. Number 1, Mr. Mind. I think anyone who hasn't heard of this villain before would be forgiven. When you think of the most fearsome villains, specifically the villains of Captain Marvel, otherwise known as Shazam, you may not first think about the 7-inch long sentient worm from Venus known as Mr. Mind. This diabolically evil mind-controlling worm, after the events of Infinite Crisis, would cocoon himself and then emerge as a massive monstrosity capable of manipulating reality, consuming universes, and traveling through time and space. He was described as eating years and events from this universe's history, altering the Earth with every flap of his wings. It took a combined effort from Booster Gold, Supernova, and Skeets to defeat Mr. Mind by trapping him inside Skeets' shell, which was fortified by the Suspendium. Then, Booster Gold threw Skeets through time with the help of Supernova to the day he was first discovered on Earth by Dr. Sivana, and then he is trapped in a time loop forever. So they didn't even actually end up ending him. They just trapped him. This all-powerful mind-controlling 7-inch long worm. Number 10, the Wonder Twins. Oh, super friends. Sometimes you just introduce characters that are only a good idea in a kids show. Jaina and Zan are alien twin sister and brother from the planet Exor, who have these super cool sounding power rings that activate when they fist bump and say Wonder Twins power activate. It sounds so cool, and it sorta is. Jaina can turn into any animal she chooses with her power. That's neat, but it's not as spectacular for Zan, who can only turn into water in one of its forms. He can turn into H2O, steam, or ice. Honestly, I could see it being used in some pretty cool ways, which is why they are so high up on this list, but still rather unique. Number 9. Doll Man. Alright, so we take the G.I. Joe toy and Jada Pinkett Smith and we will make them superheroes. With the power to shrink down to 6 inches tall while retaining the strength of a full-grown man, Daryl Dane, Doll Man, with his partner Martha Roberts, Doll Girl, is a founding member of the Freedom Fighters. He would fight crime during the 1940s and in World War II. That was when he first appeared in All-Star Squadron number 60 in August of 1986. More recently, the power of size manipulation had a psychological effect on him, causing causing him to be confined to a mental institution and then trapped in his 6-inch size with other soldiers of similar height in a miniature world. Until, get this, they fuse together as a mega monster form which just looks and sounds terrifying. Anyone ever seen Toy Soldiers? I loved that movie back in the day. I am Archer, emissary of the Gorgonites. No, I'm Adam, emissary of Top 10 Nerd. And if you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to smack that like button. It helps us know that you like us, right? I don't know.
Number 8, the final showdown. Mutant X really had a whole series, but for the purpose of this list, we're just gonna focus on one of its story arcs that takes place in the alternate reality of Earth 1298, as it was a 32-issue series, so I mean, a lot happened. The basic idea here though is that instead of X Factor, we have a non-government or corporate mutant team known as the Six. Havoc in this reality ends up with Madeline Pryor, and the two of them have a child together named Scott. Yeah, it's a little different than 616. Here Maddie does become the Goblin Queen, but like how we have the Phoenix Force, she becomes infected with the Goblin Force and its influence, turning her dark. Initially, Maddie is actually known by her hero mantle, Marvel Woman. As such, Havoc and their son Scotty must fight against the Goblin Queen. After a long build-up where no one is able to stop Madeline, it's revealed that Scotty is able to due to his insane level of power. He rids his mom of the Goblin influence, but also banishes her in the process. Don't worry though, just like in main continuity, Maddie would return here as well. I believe she gets banished to like the center of the earth. It's a weird place, but it's a pretty good place, I would say. Mutant X, should you read it? Nah, I think you should read it. I think you could read it. I don't know if you should, but you definitely could. Number 7, what if the X-Men had lost Inferno? I love this comic, mainly for the panel at the end where Alicia Masters Storm whispers to her newborn babe, "I love you, baby." I think it might be one of my all-time favorite panels ever, actually. But there is lots of weird stuff to love from this issue, including the fact that Doctor Strange and Rachel Summers also randomly deliver this baby at the end. In this What If, we imagine what would have gone down if the Goblin Queen hadn't been defeated and instead was victorious. One of the things that would have come about? Her unleashing the beast within Wolverine and turning him into a villain who devours babies. Also, Rachel becomes trapped and later freed from being a bridal mannequin? I think that's a thing that happens here. That's definitely looks like what's happening. Also, I love Rachel as a bridal mannequin. And how after she's like, "Thanks, my face hurt, too much smiling." Oh, by the way, Doctor Strange, who frees Rachel, he also gets to wear a cool eye patch in this world. Why? Because he's Doctor Strange. He gets an eye patch. I like it. Everyone should have eye patches. I want an alternate reality where everyone has an eye patch. Number 6, Ghost Racers. This is a series that comes from the Battle World pocket dimension that was governed by God Emperor Doom. Just like we had the Thor Corps, here we have the Ghost Racers, which is basically like its own category of racing, creating an organization or like even a company out of that set form, like NASCAR. The Ghost Racers are made up of various ghost riders who of course race one another for Battle World's entertainment. And of course, so wealthy fans can ideally make some funds on the wins and losses of each race. Although all the riders are pitted against one another, and eventually Arcade, who is in charge of them, sends them to take down Robbie Reyes, the current racing champion, eventually they all remember what things were like before Battle World, and they decide to rise up against those that are controlling them. Which I love. Also, I just love the idea of like just a group of racers that are just all ghost riders, and they're like, we race each other for fun. This is what we do now. Ghost Racers. Number 5. What if Wolverine battled Conan the Barbarian? In issue number 16 of the second volume of What If, we get to see what would happen if Wolverine somehow came to the time and lands of Conan and the duo ended up fighting one another. That's basically what What Ifs are for, right? Just seeing people that would not normally fight, and who will win. In order to revive his love, Conan is asked to bring another soul in her place to sacrifice. The soul that he decides to bring is actually Red Sonja, so that's not great because Wolverine, having fought with Red Sonja previously, had basically kind of fallen for her, and he does not agree with what is going on because of his own sentiment. He wants to rescue Sonja, probably because she reminds him of Jean Grey. Honestly, it's pretty weird to me that no one has ever said that like Jean Grey and Mary Jane Watson look similar, considering people have both thought that they looked like Red Sonja in the comics. So do all women with red hair just look the same? Is that the implication here? Or do all three of these women actually closely resemble one another, but we never really acknowledge that like Jean and MJ like look very similar, like weirdly similar. And Red Sonja's in there too. It's like the trifecta of like redheads. In the end, Wolverine takes Conan's hand in a fight that the two have, and the two end up permanently swapping places, with Conan returning to Wolverine's home reality and Wolverine staying in Conan's age. Wolverine finds a happy ending with Sonja. Conan, not so much. He like sees Jean and then she goes full Dark Phoenix, and then that's the end of that. Number 4. Age of Ultron vs. Marvel Zombies. Another even more bizarre story coming at us from God Emperor Doom's Battle World. This comic was all about the world that existed outside, actually, of Doom's Battle World, known as the Deadlands. And if you didn't like living by Doom's rules, well, you certainly wouldn't like this. But this might be where you would end up. Defy Doom, and this could be a place that he put you. Age of Ultron vs. Marvel Zombies explored these Deadlands that were watched over by Annihilus' insect creatures. And yeah, it's about as wild as it sounds. Around every corner, with the flip of every page, awaits more gore, folks losing their heads, and monsters, monsters, monsters! I think in a world of zombies versus robots, no one really wins. Is that the takeaway here? Also, because this is Battle World, there are lots of appearances of random multiversal characters, such as young Hank Pym, who's kinda like the main character of this, from the past alternate Earth of 51920, and the Pilgrim Punisher of Earth 15513. At least he looks like a Pilgrim Punisher. I like that he still has his skull shirt though. So he's like got the hat, he's got the coat, and he's like still got this like very 80s style looking logo and shirt. Number 3. Ruins. Ruins is just the most messed up kind of weird that a multiversal story can be. This comic offers a much darker take on what the world could be like with superpowers. Of course, it is a story by Garth Ennis, so yes, darker is definitely where we're going here. As brutal as Ruins is, well, I kinda love how dark and awful it gets. The series deals with the less fantastical, more literal interpretations of powers and their uses, and how less hopeful civilians and government agencies might react or take advantage of said superpowers. In this world, Quicksilver is just a torso with his limbs moving too fast, causing him problems, so they all had to be amputated. At least that's what's implied. Or they just didn't like that he went fast, so they amputated them. The Hulk is an irradiated pile of tumors, which ultimately dies under the weight of his own mutation, and the Silver Surfer ends up driven mad by his own cosmic existence, taking his own life by clawing his own chest open while floating through space. This is a bleak and disturbing world filled with pain and suffering. Not heroes in capes. That's part of what makes it great, and part of what makes it weird, and part of what makes it horrifying. Number 2. What if Conan the Barbarian were stranded in the 20th century? And if you thought Wolverine and Conan fighting was weird, it just gets a whole lot weirder with this issue. However, I guess I should say that it gets a whole lot less weird, as the previous Conan What If we talked about was actually from the second volume of the series, as opposed to this issue that we're talking about, which is actually from the original series. In issue 43 of What If, we learn what would happen if Conan, instead of just coming to the modern day, was stranded there and stuck there. This What If was actually inspired by another fan favorite What If featured in issue 13. What if Conan the Barbarian walked the earth today? In this story, because Conan never gets teleported by lightning home, he becomes a criminal. Because, I mean, why not, I guess? He's confused, he doesn't know what he's doing. However, after creating a gang and getting into some trouble, he attracts the attention of the Avengers. But Captain America sees more than just a brute, and believes Conan is just misguided, but he has a hero's heart, truly. He offers him a spot on the Avengers, and we actually never learn what Conan decides because the issue ends. Talk about a cliffhanger. I don't know if we'll ever come back. Do we ever come back to that? It's like, will I call him? Won't I call him? And then the Watcher's like, well, I would tell you, but I can't because that's a story for another time. Maybe if we ever do it. Number 1. Marvel. Even saying the title sounds just like an experience. I don't even know where to start with Marvel because this continuity feels so just like non-existent here. There's no through line. The story is meant to be about Kal-AOL, a play on Kal-El, a kid from the future who is sent back in time to save the world and to save himself. In the future, you see the world is about to end. Unfortunately though, that doesn't happen. While Al doesn't have any powers, he somehow is moderately successful as a hero. After the world doesn't end, his parents send the time machine they originally sent him through back in time to pick him up. But Al decided to travel back in time to the beginning instead. There he meets maybe God, and also learns that Wolverine evolved from an otter and dinosaurs can talk. With every issue in this story, you ask yourself, how can it get any weirder? And then it somehow does that. Also, what's up with these covers? They're almost completely unrelated to the plot of the comics. I guess sexy ladies sell comics, and so who needs a plot was the thought process with Marvel. At least with the covers.
At number 10 is the Punch Dimension. This probably wins the award for the most uncomfortable and painful universe on this list, unless you're Cyclops, in which case it's actually probably the most useful, but still pretty painful I'd imagine. In fact, the Punch Dimension is where Cyclops gets all of his power from, because instead of him actually generating all his power from within, his eyes are actually known to be doorways to this dimension, which he can summon kinetic energy out of on command. But if anyone else were to travel there, they'd probably die immediately. Honestly, Cyclops probably would too. To think that there's just a dimension out there that consists of pure concentrated kinetic energy and nothing else is definitely bizarre, if not terrifying.
Number 9. Legion. David Haller, the estranged son of Charles Xavier, is a very powerful mutant. He's also quite unique in the huge gallery of Marvel mutants. David has hundreds and hundreds of mutant powers that each belong to a separate persona and can be good or bad. For the purpose of our video today, there are several personas of David that come to mind. The first is straight up the Legion, which he describes as, quote, real me, and has been called a god mutant by the mutant magic. The Legion is able to both warp reality to his will and manipulate time, which he used to create the Age of Apocalypse and eliminate the Elder Gods of Limbo, which is a huge feat. Then there is the Weaver, who is a big old brightly lit spider-like creature that has the ability to change, morph, and otherwise refabricate reality itself, but it's one of the only personas that he can neither coax into his service nor assimilate with. There is also X, or Moira, that takes the form of Moira McTaggart and was able to best Professor X in psychic battle and warp reality, single-handedly creating the Age of X, where David would be seen as a hero and placed herself as the mother of David, which is a huge mind mess. While it's not really manipulation, the personality time sync can manipulate the flow of time, pausing time for Frenzy, freezing Magneto for 2 minutes, and showing Gambit memories of his own past. And then there is my favorite, the Origamiist, a massive sumo wrestler who can bend and warp the fabric of space. He has been used only once so far, when Legion was in danger from an explosion, and he used the Origamiist to fold the explosion away into a separate dimension and teleport it away from the scene. That's insane. In at number 8 though is Franklin Richards. As the child of Reed Richards and Sue Storm, Franklin Richards was expected to be a big deal, and he really was. I say was because Franklin Richards is currently depowered as far as I know, but that could totally change if Marvel decides to. Before his depowering though, this kid had some pretty major reality warping abilities. There's an incredibly famous moment from the Fantastic Four story written by Jonathan Hickman where Franklin is dressed up all rootin' tootin' in a Wild West outfit, strapped up with 2 plastic toy big irons, and he points these at Norman Osborn and using his abilities makes them actually fire. It's insane. He has been shown to create a pocket universe, create life doubles of someone, bring back the dead, and create entire planets. Franklin is one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel universe, so much so that the Celestials even fear him. And it's not just simple reality warping. In that same Fantastic Four story, Franklin's older self went back through time to train his younger self and protect the Fantastic Four, and he made Galactus his herald in a comic book moment that will literally knock your socks off. I'm really hoping that over time his powers are returned and he does some more really cool stuff, because he's always been one of my favorite characters. Number 7, Dr. Fate. I think it's somewhat safe to say that magic is pretty much reality warping, and if it's not, then there are spells that are performed by Dr. Fate that are definitely reality warping. On his own, Kent Nelson is an accomplished sorcerer and has some knowledge of the mystic arts, but the majority of Kent's powers come from Naboo through the Helmet of Fate that grants him vast magical powers, including reality manipulation, matter manipulation, and time traveling. He has rolled back the borders of the space-time continuum, and even though it's not really reality warping, he telepathically moved a planet, which, like, come on. One interesting moment was when he fought Mordru, and as the fight plays out, they are literally transforming from different dimension to different dimension. At least that's what I took from reading it, because it's just bonkers. He's been able to reassemble his own existence with a thought, fire miniature suns at Green Lantern, resurrect people, and has even changed a whole whack of people's blood type in order to save a man. We could go on, but we have others to talk about today. Like number 6, Doctor Strange, the other astronomically powerful magic-wielding character who goes by Doctor. Only, in terms of capability, Doctor Strange is not at the level of Dr. Fate. Doctor Strange is his universe's sorcerer supreme and master of the mystic arts, and he calls upon a group of cosmic entities known as the Vishanti for most of his power. The Vishanti are a trinity of godly beings that are some of the most powerful in Marvel Comics, and back in the good old days, Strange could use the magic they granted to do basically anything he wanted to. His usual mystical abilities include energy blasts, telepathy, transmutation, astral forms, invisibility and intangibility, telekinesis, flight, shields, illusions, time manipulation, elemental manipulation, teleportation, and then whatever random little spell he pulls out of his sleeves when a writer needs to do something crazy. In the Marvel What If series though, we actually see Strange Supreme, who is like regular Doctor Strange but on a different level. He was able to destroy his entire universe and ate a galaxy-destroying attack launched by an Ultron who possessed the Infinity Gems. But like I said, between him and Dr. Fate, Fate is coming out on top like 9 times out of 10. Number 5, the Spectre. The Spectre itself is actually a cosmic entity and is the physical manifestation of God's vengeance on Earth. But this spirit or entity needs to be permanently bonded to a human soul in order to manifest itself. Jim Corrigan, a fallen Hal Jordan, and then Crispus Allen have been the main 3 humans to be the host for the Spectre. The Spectre though is one of the most powerful, magical, and cosmic entities in the DC creation. But while the Spectre's power unchecked is nearly unlimited and is capable of shattering universes, he is generally limited by the presence to a lower level of power to prevent the power from corrupting him. But don't think that makes him a chump. The Spectre has the power to do pretty much anything. The Spectre is nigh omnipotent, he has the capability to alter reality, literally erasing people from existence. He can alter his size to grow to any height, and can fire off mystical blasts of eldritch energy. And he has vast magical capabilities as well that allow him to cast spells to do pretty much anything else he wants to do. His wiki says his superhuman strength can be, quote, as strong as he needs it to be, which, what does that even mean? The Spectre has infinite energy, has held apart 2 universes, can judge any reality in any dimension, and has the power to tear down heaven and hell, so he's making this list. Number 4, the Flash. Flashpoint. It's kind of the only thing we gotta talk about when saying that the Flash breaks reality. But this all comes from the Flash's ability to utilize the Speed Force, through which he can mess around with time itself. That's what happened in Flashpoint when Barry Allen went back in time and prevented the passing of his own mother, which is an act we can probably all understand. But unlike the rest of us, Flash can alter time, and when he did this, it created a whole other branch reality where the world and even himself were way different. Now, granted, this altercation of reality wasn't entirely on purpose, but the fact that he did it means he can also do it again, and he did when he tried to restore reality back to the way it was supposed to be. Sure, he didn't do that, but that's thanks to Dr. Manhattan. Or we could even talk about Wally West, who has an even greater control over the Speed Force, and he could and has messed around with it enough that given the right story, he could totally alter reality to whatever he wants. For a hero who started off as being someone who just runs really fast, he kind of sure as hell became a threat to our reality. Number 3, Divinity. Abram Adams, otherwise known as Divinity, is an incredibly powerful godlike hero who appears in Valiant Comics. And it's rather interesting how much he is like, but also unlike, Dr. Manhattan. Knowing full well his level of power and the impact his actions could have, he doesn't really involve himself in human level issues, letting us instead learn from the mistakes that we naturally make, which makes him sound a lot like a god, honestly. Abram came into his power after joining the army of the Soviet Union and taking on a 30-year-long mission into deep space. Now during that mission, Abrams and his partners came upon a planet beyond the end of the galaxy called the Unknown. After removing his helmet, Adams breathed in the air of the Unknown and was changed, granting him chronokinesis, or the ability to manipulate time, forced evolution and de-evolution, energy manipulation, molecular manipulation, and reality warping. Plus some more basic powers powers like flight, heat vision, telepathy, super senses, and immortality, all that fun stuff. Being from Valiant Comics, he's a little unheard of, but he's honestly a truly awesome and powerful character, and you should check him out. Number 2, the Batman Who Laughs. The Batman Who Laughs is arguably one of the most dangerous versions of Batman who has ever lived, other than Batman himself. If you don't know yet, he is a dark multiverse version of Batman who took down the Joker, but inadvertently infected himself with a strain of Joker toxin. The resulting transformation turns this version of Bruce Wayne into an amalgamation of Joker and Batman. All the intelligence and resourcefulness and martial skill of Batman mixed with the buck-wild, psychotic, murderous mind of the Joker. He is pure chaos and destruction, and he lays waste to his own Bat family and the whole Justice League. He has a pack of Jokerized Robins, and he is the leader of the Dark Knights. He is also a lieutenant of the Dark God Barbados, and he convinced Perpetua, the original creator of the Multiverse, to choose him as her lieutenant, eventually acquiring cosmic power and becoming an even bigger threat than even Perpetua herself. And finally, in at number 1, it's Saint Batman. As some of you may know, when Bane broke the back of Bruce Wayne in the Batman Nightfall storyline, Bruce was briefly replaced as the Dark Knight in favor of John Paul Valley, otherwise known as the somewhat extreme crime fighter Azrael. Eventually, the status quo was returned and Bruce took the mantle of Batman back, but as you know, in the Dark Multiverse, everything can and will happen, and so of course, we see the dark outcome of what would happen if Bruce never got to take back his cowl. In the Dark Multiverse version of Batman Nightfall, John Paul Valley doesn't return the mantle, and instead, believing himself to be the best successor to the Batman name, he defeats Bruce Wayne and the entire Bat family. Over the next 30 years, John Paul, now going by Saint Batman, has destroyed and rebuilt the city of Gotham. He stripped Bruce of his arms and legs and keeps Bruce on life support, just trying to get Bruce to admit that John Paul was the right choice for the role of Batman. Unfortunately, Saint Batman had crossed the wrong people, and he suffered a pretty brutal defeat at the hands of Lady Shiva, the son of Bane, and a restored cyborg Batman.
Number 10, Miracle Man. It's kind of weird to think, but Miracle Man exists over at Marvel Comics. Although admittedly, the story of Miracle Man feels like it would fit perhaps a bit better over at a publisher like Dynamite Entertainment based on the story. It seems like a narrative that would fit more comfortably next to Dynamite's The Boys. It's a bleak story about a madman who experimented on basically young orphans using alien tech in order to try and create the perfect being. The power that they wield, however, comes both with perks as well as devastating setbacks, with the young sidekick of Marvel Man, later renamed Miracle Man, actually being driven mad by the power he wields and ending up ultimately becoming the world's greatest supervillain, despite inside still just being a young boy. When you think about it, it's pretty crazy to think that Miracle Man is like a part of Marvel. That's wild. Of course, at least it's self-contained within its own world, but still, it's a pretty dark story over there in Earth 18.
Number 9, Invincible. There's gotta be some solace in knowing you are the best of all the other alternate versions of yourself. After a character who can travel the multiverse and is dedicated to ending Mark, Angstrom Levy, assembles 16 evil versions of Mark Grayson, he unleashes them on the Earth. They are all a guy who is named Invincible, so you can imagine the amount of damage they can do. They crush through everything. Every major city, Paris, Moscow, London, New York, is under attack and destroyed. All the heroes of the world are called in to face these guys. Just one version of Mark was able to take out the whole of the Guardians of the Globe, only being stopped by Rexplode, who literally destroys himself to take one out. By day 3, 8 of these Marks are still alive and have the world in ruins. It was all because Angstrom promised them larger multiversal empires that they could conquer, and that's what they plan to do.
Number 8, Dr. Manhattan. Dr. Manhattan could be seen as someone who fixed the multiverse, or as someone who broke it, depending on your opinion. Well, yes, Flash started off Flashpoint and seemingly fixed everything, but then also it kind of resulted seemingly in the creation of the New 52. Dr. Manhattan was also involved in the New 52's creation, using his mega reality warping powers to do so. And we're actually led to believe in Doomsday Clock that Dr. Manhattan, not Flash, was actually the mastermind behind it all, with the death of Green Lantern Alan Scott. I would say that both Dr. Manhattan and Flash together are really responsible for the creation of the New 52 continuity. Like, I think it's fair for us to just like let them share that, which for better or worse, or maybe a bit of both, changed a lot of things. Dr. Manhattan actually made this attempt to fix the multiverse in order to prevent a superhuman World War III, which he believed would result in the destruction of all reality. In a way, New 52 was once again a sort of like break it to fix it thing. For DC, it was their way of cleaning up the continuity, but in doing so it also led to a lot of confusion, as now you are completely changing the narrative, so people who were following prior to that and had things changed on them are just going to be pretty confused. I know, I get confused all the time, and literally it's my job to know this stuff. So thanks, but also maybe no thanks, Dr. Manhattan?
Number 7, Mr. Fantastic. Hey, if you're gonna destroy every universe in an infinite multiverse, this is the way to do it, I guess. After Galactus met his bitter end, an even worse threat by the name of Abraxas came on the scene. Comic book characters can never just have a day off, apparently. Abraxas corrupts a bunch of different versions of Nova, cuts short the life of multiple more versions of Galactus, and went up against the Earth 616 Fantastic Four because you can apparently go on a terror spree across multiple different universes, taking out cosmic beings, but 4 superpowered humans from Earth will just give you a pause. After Franklin Richards used his powers to revive Galactus, who stole the Ultimate Nullifier, the most powerful weapon in the universe, that is just a weird, flat French horn looking thing, it was dropped while in a fight with Abraxas and landed at the feet of Reed Richards, who picked it up and, seeing no other choice, activated that little sucker. In Fantastic Four number 49, the universe was rewritten with Abraxas having never existed at all, and everything was just all hunky-dory, so it's actually pretty good.
Number 6, Doctor Strange. I mean, yeah, we gotta have Doctor Strange on this list, right? After the events of No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness. Although at least Doctor Strange wasn't explicitly responsible for everything getting weird in the multiverse during MOM. He was more there trying to find a way out to fix it, but also by doing things that, you know, you're kinda not supposed to be doing as a magic user. Like, you know, reanimating the dead and possessing them. But hey, that's Strange for you. He breaks the magic rules when he needs to. And because he's not Sorcerer Supreme right now in the MCU, he's actually kind of more free to do so, which I personally like. I know there's a lot of people that are like, but he has to be Sorcerer Supreme, and I'm like, no, then he can break all the rules and it probably won't matter as much. The breaking of the Marvel Cinematic Universe began back in Loki, with the major divergence from the sacred timeline, which created a ton of splinters. This is believed to be the moment that introduced us to the true multiverse in the cinematic reality. But Doctor Strange also cracked it open like an egg in No Way Home when he attempted to use his power to rewrite reality and make everyone forget that Spider-Man was Peter Parker in order to fix Peter's life and also help him and his best friends basically get accepted to college. This worked, but at great cost to Peter, and it also threatened to completely tear apart reality and the multiverse.
Number 5, Batman. The Batman of Earth -22 grew up very similarly to other versions of the character. But of course, the Joker went and messed that all up. The Joker of this universe went on a spree of maniacal de-lifing. All of Batman's other villains, Commissioner Gordon, a hospital, etc, etc. Batman was finally driven to the point of finally removing the Joker from the picture. But in doing so, he was exposed to a special Joker toxin that turned him into a crazed Joker-Batman hybrid. This Batman who laughs went out into the dark multiverse, assembling other messed up versions of Batman and eventually setting them loose on Earth Zero. A whole whack of stuff happens with this Batman, allying with basically a god and becoming a huge comic event with multiple universes' heroes having to team up to take them on. But way later on, this Batman eventually gets his mind implanted into a Batman infused with the power of Dr. Manhattan. In this darkest night form, he subdues Perpetua and fights a golden Wonder Woman across space and time. Yeah, it's what happens when you mash a Batman with a Joker. Who'd have thought? Not me.
Number 4, Superboy Prime. Superboy Prime isn't really a hero, not anymore, but he did start out as a hero, so it still counts. He just basically became corrupted by losing his entire world and being trapped in like an extra dimensional reality, which started as paradise, but then eventually kind of like began to feel like a prison to him, which honestly, I mean, fair enough. That would make me a villain too. I mean, it sounds like it would be a lot. And he was also stuck there since like the 80s and the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is a long time. Superboy Prime, as a result of his frustration, decided to take out his anger and pain on reality by, well, punching it. And his punch was actually so powerful that it cracked the multiverse, in essence, fixing all the retcons that we really were like not here for. Prompting all of us comic book fans to joke that sometimes, in order to fix all those pesky retcons, the multiverse just needs one good punch to knock it straight again.
Number 3, Molecule Man. The Incursions, an event in the multiverse starting from a paradoxical event where realities begin colliding together. Earth on Earth throwdowns. In the red corner, an Earth where the inhabitants are bird people. In the blue corner, an Earth thrown together with evil versions of fan favorite characters. Round 1, fight! In the lead up to Marvel's Secret Wars event, where all the characters and parts of different realities were mashed together on one plane called Battle World, the multiverse was facing a rather large calamity. These incursions were caused by a species of extremely powerful aliens called the Beyonders, who created the Molecule Man, Owen Reese, as a means to destroy the multiverse. When Molecule Man brings an alternate version of himself to an end, it also destroys that universe, resulting in the start of the incursions. It's confusing. Earths come crashing into each other. The Beyonders try to make sure it happens, Molecule Man and Dr. Doom try to stop it from happening, sort of, and all of the other heroes on Earth try their best to figure out what the heck is going on. It's great. I mean, it's awful. No, it's great. It's pretty great.
Number 2, Iron Lad. When Iron Lad created the Young Avengers, he in essence challenged the very multiverse to a duel. Iron Lad at the time was looking for help in protecting himself from his future self, Kang, and had been attempting to reach out to the Avengers when he founded the Young Avengers team. Taking the name Iron Lad, he became kinda like the team's version of Iron Man. However, he would also later learn of the importance of his destiny to become Kang the Conqueror and the other slew of villains and characters that Kang has assumed the identity of and been throughout the years and throughout multiple timelines and all the timey-wimey stuff. Iron Lad learned from Kang that if he didn't fulfill his destiny to become a villain, that the multiverse would in essence crumble and then fall apart. Kang is kind of part of the glue that holds it all together, because he pops up everywhere in the timeline and across multiple universes. The real crazy part is that even the Young Avengers team agreed with Kang. That's how right he was in this instance. Even the heroes were on his side for this one. So despite not wanting to become a villain, Iron Lad had to, or risk the multiverse falling apart.
Number 1, Flash. Ever heard of Flashpoint? Well, you should have, because we talked about it earlier. It's basically the event where the Flash goes back in time using the Speed Force to save his mother from dying. But it results in a dark and twisted reality. Has no one ever heard that you don't mess with time? Apparently not. Once Barry Allen put everything right, well, he didn't put everything right. No, instead he created the New 52, which was basically a whole multiversal reboot for all of DC Comics. Barry Allen's little time-altering adventures created cracks in the multiverse that affected all kinds of universes and also weakened the space between universes. This caught the attention of the least favorite thick and bald evil god Darkseid, who was now using Barry and these multiversal cracks to empower himself even more than he already is. Darkseid gains control of the multiverse, forming chains and barriers to block and separate all the Earths while forcing them to bow before his power. Can someone please tell Flash to just stop?
Number 10, Amalgam. The Amalgam universe is one of my all-time favorites when it comes to odd Marvel worlds. It exists as a bridge between both the Marvel multiverse and the DC multiverse. To this day, I still cannot believe Amalgam was allowed to happen. And it gives me hope that maybe one day we could see a live-action crossover film or TV series between the big two publishers of Marvel and DC. The Amalgam universe first appeared in a series of 12 one-shots that were all part of the DC Marvel crossover event. Right near the end, they all kind of came in. The Amalgam universe doesn't have one designated number, as both Marvel and DC have their own assigned numbers for this Earth. Also, the Amalgam universe only existed in print for 2 short years, from 1996 to 1997. Rest in peace. However, I still hope to one day see its return in print or on the big screen. Fingers crossed.
Number 9, Ultron. Ultron is an interesting addition to this list, and one I'm not sure how people will feel about. Destroying reality is a big task to undertake, and while Ultron's goal isn't really complete destruction of reality, the sheer unrelenting nature of the villain leads us to believe that it is entirely possible. And we have seen him grow to be powerful enough to do it. I'm kind of specifically talking about the Ultron we see in the Disney Plus What If series. This version of Ultron was successful in loading himself into the body of Vision that he created. Thanks to this, he was successful in launching the world's nuclear arsenal and wiping out most of the life on Earth. But this is where I start to believe he could wipe out reality, because now that he has successfully done what he had to do, Thanos shows up and is like, "What up? Give me that Mind Stone." And Ultron is like, and he just splits Thanos in half and takes the rest of the Infinity Gems, gaining access to an omniscience that drives him, eventually, to destroy all life in his universe and then spread into the multiverse, battling Uatu the Watcher through the Nexus of Reality. If you haven't watched this series, just please do it. Number 8, Mr. Mxyzptlk. Although the 5th dimensional imp known as Mr. Mxyzptlk has reality warping powers that could bring the end of all things, he usually only uses his powers to annoy and have fun with his favorite superhero ever, Superman. He's more of a harmless nuisance than a real supervillain, but we have proof that if he had just one bad day, he could likely bring ruin to the whole DC multiverse. In the famous Emperor Joker story, we get to see what exactly would happen if the clown prince of crime himself got his hands on the reality warping powers of this imp. He tricks the little guy into granting the Joker 99.99% of his power, and with it, Joker turns the whole universe into his playground. It's a wild ride that does actually end in Joker pretty much destroying reality. Luckily, Mr. Mxyzptlk, with the help of Superman, does find a way to return his power and fix everything. But just knowing what he can do to our reality is enough to send shivers down your spine. Number 7. The One Below All. The One Below All is a relatively recent addition to the comics, but the idea of the entity isn't, as we have known about the One Above All for a while, and his mere existence begs the question of who inhabits the opposite side of the spectrum. Thanks to the Immortal Hulk, we now know, and it is utterly terrifying. He resides in the Below Place, and his power has been manifesting itself for decades in the form of gamma mutates like the Hulk. In the story, we do get a brief glimpse of what could actually happen if the embodiment of destruction and nothingness were to be set loose on the multiverse. Basically, the One Below All completely takes over the body of the Immortal Hulk, and using this body, he brings an end to the current version of the multiverse, destroying literally everything and everyone over billions of years, including the very essence of life and the multiverse itself. So that when the multiverse is rebirthed into its new version, it is the last time it can truly even happen, with the Hulk / One Below All / Breaker of Worlds consuming everything to grow to a massive planetary scale, wiping out all of existence. But thanks to some time / reality traveling bugs, this does not come to pass. But it could, and that's all you need to know. Number 6. The Anti-Monitor. Billions of years ago, with the creation of the multiverse, when a scientist named Krona, a guardian of the universe on the Green Lantern world of Oa, tried to use a device that would allow him to witness creation itself. A massive explosion occurred which altered the creation of the universe itself, giving birth to the multiverse. Among the countless alternate realities created in this incident was the antimatter universe, the birthplace of the Anti-Monitor, the embodiment of evil, who seeks to conquer all of existence, and his brother the Monitor, who embodies goodness and watches over life. Now, the Anti-Monitor is a being of extraordinary power who feeds on the energies of destroyed universes. These energies further increase his power, allowing him to manipulate reality and even travel through time. He can also unleash his energy as bolts or shockwaves to attack his opponents. He, or it, or however you want to refer to this monster, also has an army of shadow demons from the antimatter universe at his command. However, the extent of the Anti-Monitor's power is dependent on his energy levels, which can be drained in order to weaken him. Still, only another cosmic being like the Monitor or the Spectre is capable of opposing the Anti-Monitor at full power, and even they need help from some of DC's top heroes to put him down for good. Number 5. The Gentry. Have you read Multiversity? It's probably the most confusing way to explain a multiverse ever, but whatever. The main big bads from that book would be the Gentry. They are a group of powerful beings led by the Empty Hand, a mind-bogglingly powerful entity who feeds on dead multiverses and is the right hand of the Great Darkness, who himself is the antithesis to the Presence, who is basically DC's god. They hail from a place outside of the multiverse, said to be the opposite of everything natural, and they are basically all the villainous archetypes taken to their extremes. Intellicatron is the mastermind, Dame Merciless is the femme fatale, Demogorgon is the zombie horde, Lord Broken is the madhouse, and Hell Machine is like the brute. And they are all absolutely mind-bendingly bonkers. They wield a power called the anti-death equation, which is a power that twists and disfigures the fabrics of reality. It's been used to revive deceased individuals and corrode living ones in a process called gentrification. I just really hope that I got that explanation right, because it was kind of difficult to understand. Number 4, the Beyonders. Okay, for starters, these guys are a race of beings from outside the multiverse, just like the last one. How that works, I do not know, but what I do know is that these beings are basically like scientists, conducting experiments on a multiversal scale. They created the singularity of Molecule Man in all universes specifically to destroy said universes. They have been shown to defeat the Celestials, Eternity, Infinity, Lord Chaos, Master Order, the In-Betweener, and even the Living Tribunal throughout all realities at once. And those cosmic entities are some of the most powerful in their respective universes. The existence and the struggle to defeat them literally resulted in the destruction of multiple universes and eventually the multiverse itself, as Dr. Doom, using multiple Molecule Men, defeated the Beyonders and created the mashed up reality of Battleworld. Number 3. Dr. Doom. Speaking of Dr. Doom, he literally found a way to defeat the Beyonders, so I think adding him to this list just kinda makes sense. While he himself is sorta just a dude, it's what he does with his technology, magic, and massive evil brain that make him completely capable of destroying reality. We already talked about how he managed to create Battleworld, but in that world he became the supreme god king, able to do seriously impressive feats like ripping out Thanos' spine and turning him to dust, or creating a police force of multiple Thors, or recreating and improving magical artifacts like the Eye of Agamotto or Mjolnir. That was just one aspect of him though. But if we want an idea of just how unrelenting Doom can be, let's talk about the Marquis of Death. The Marquis was a supremely powerful villain who actually took Doom as his apprentice, and then left the Earth and took on a new apprentice. When he returned to Earth, the Marquis was disappointed by Doom's many failings at the hands of the Fantastic Four, and so he turned Doom's heart to stone, his blood to acid, and then, with his apprentice, sent Doom back millions of years in time where he was eaten by a megalodon. Now it turns out that Doom survived all of that, then spent millions of years studying black magic and the dark arts, changing every molecule of his own body and becoming that same apprentice that just helped the Marquis of Death. He then revealed himself, told the Marquis to shut the hell up, and took him off the playing field in a swift move. Number 2. The Darkest Knight. Okay, so by this point most of you nerds out there know who the Batman Who Laughs is. A Batman who has been infected by the Joker toxin and gathered other Dark Universe versions of Batman, using them to become a scourge on the multiverse. He has plans on top of plans with backup plans for those plans and further backup plans for his backup plans. When the Batman Who Laughs fought against the Justice League, he was beheaded by none other than Wonder Woman using a chainsaw, which is an awesome sentence to say out loud. But this guy kind of foresaw this. So he found a reality where Bruce Wayne discovered the comedian's button from the Watchmen series and created an intrinsic field generator. The evil Batman then locked this Batman in that machine and basically turned this Bruce Wayne into Dr. Manhattan. He then lobotomized this Bruce Wayne and then kept him locked far away, hidden from everyone except his knights. So now that he was beheaded, his knights took his brain and transplanted it inside the Manhattan Bruce Wayne, meaning that the Batman Who Laughs got the powers of Dr. Manhattan, who is basically a multiversal level god. He became the Darkest Knight, killing Perpetua and fighting a golden armored god Wonder Woman across time and space. It's mind-boggling. And in at number 1 is Molecule Man. His name is Molecule Man. Can you guess what he can do? Owen Reese, Molecule Man, possesses the ability to mentally control, transform, and manipulate the molecules of all matter and energy, seemingly on minor and massive scales. He can bring inanimate objects to life, like making a brick wall walk, but then he has also been able to effortlessly recreate an entire galaxy in his base regular form. He has dropped an entire mountain on the Avengers, and even Galactus fears this guy as he knows that he could destroy the Devourer of Worlds with a simple thought. He can transmute matter to whatever he wants, turning air into glass, which kind of beats Doctor Strange's water into wine thing in Multiverse of Madness. He can become pure energy if he wants to, and he can create literal wormholes in space, essentially making him move faster than light. He has defeated his own creators, the Beyonders, who literally created him as a singular entity, but the same across all universes to act as a reality-destroying bomb, essentially. It is debatable, but I believe he may be the most powerful character in the Marvel Multiverse. Starting off the list today at number 10 is is Red Death. The Dark Multiverse was given to us largely by telling the story of multiple different versions of Batman who have each been twisted into a corrupted, villainous version of Bruce Wayne. Brought together by the Batman Who Laughs, the Dark Knights are basically like an evil collection of Batman from across the Dark Multiverse, each one standing in or representing a member of the Justice League. Arguably one of the most popular of these Batman would be Red Death, an evil Bruce Wayne with the powers of the Flash. In his dark reality, Bruce Wayne was pushed to the limit after losing so many of his sidekicks, which should be a good reason for why he should stop recruiting younglings to be his Robins, but I digress. Believing that he needed to be more brutal in his crime fighting and that he would be better at using the Speed Force than Barry Allen, Bruce took down Flash's rogues, took their equipment, and then used it against his fellow Justice Leaguer. Batman then strapped Barry to his Batmobile, fused it together with the Cosmic Treadmill, and then he drove it all into the Speed Force, absorbing Barry and his powers. Bruce, now empowered with the Speed Force and much more evil than he should be, became the Red Death and joined with the Batman Who Laughs and his Dark Knights.
At number 9 is Marvel Noir. On Earth 90214, all of the most popular heroes get their own retellings through the lens of the 1920s and 1930s era. And although I think this is a really cool idea, some of the characters that get their own noir makeovers just come off as a bit bizarre. A few of them give me that uncanny feeling where I can't tell whether the steampunk aesthetic is really cool for them or just doesn't work as smoothly as others, like the noir Iron Man or the pirate portrayal of Namor. But overall, we do end up with Spider-Man Noir, who has become a well-known alternate version of the hero, especially after being voiced by Nicolas Cage in the Into the Spider-Verse animated film. Don't get me wrong, I actually think this universe is really cool, but it's also very weird, hence why it's made it onto this list. At number 8, we have the Pocket Universe. This one is definitely a bizarre concept that really puts things into perspective on and off the page. Franklin Richards, son of Reed Richards and the Invisible Woman, has some really powerful abilities, and in one instance in particular, he shows what he's capable of in a really impressive way. The young boy harnesses the dimensions of space, time, and reality to develop his very own universe, which he creates to be small enough to fit in his own pocket, hence the name. And although we don't see everything that goes on inside this fabricated pocket universe, we can assume that no matter what, it's gotta be a weird existence. Especially when a ball of lint in the boy's pocket is probably the size of thousands of solar systems put together. At number 7 is Marvel 1602. This is a fun one, but it's definitely quite bizarre at the same time. It might be pretty obvious by the name, but basically, this universe tells the stories of the heroes and villains we know today as if they lived in the 1600s. With Count Otto von Doom ruling a medieval Latveria, heroes like Matthew Murdoch, a blind mercenary for hire, and Peter Parquois, an orphan recruited by Sir Nicholas Fury, have to put a stop to him. Another bizarre thing about this world is that mutants aren't seen as superheroes and aren't part of a team called the X-Men, but are instead known as witch breeds, and they are hunted down systematically by anyone who will dare challenge them. It's definitely a fun world to explore, but it sort of gives me the creeps as well. At number 6, we have the Zombieverse. This is one I'm sure many of you are familiar with, as it's become pretty popular over the years. Basically, Earth 2149 is overrun by zombies, and they don't stop short of turning superheroes to the ghoulish side as well as humans. What we end up with is a whole universe with superpowered zombies jumping and flying around, trying to destroy everything in their paths, including their former teammates and lifelong friends. It's a strange place that puts into question the integrity of superpowered beings and sort of tarnishes the dignity of all our favorite heroes all at once. But it's all in good fun in the end, and we get an exciting, gory, and very weird read as a result. At number 5 is the Amalgam Universe. This is a strange one because it outlines the event of a what-if scenario where Marvel and DC characters are mashed into hybrids. In Marvel vs. DC number 3, characters from Marvel's Earth 616 and DC's New Earth morph together, leaving us with some pretty cool but ultimately just flat out weird characters, like a Superman Captain America mashup and Iron Man getting a power ring turning him into Iron Lantern. And of course, with these newly powered up amalgam heroes, there also has to be a mashup version of the two different worlds' villains too, right? So we get Thanoside, a very cleverly named mashup of Darkseid and Thanos. What makes this universe so weird is that it's a very rare example of the two comic book companies coming together in unison, and the resulting contents are just as bizarre as this rare partnership is. So there you have it. The Weird World of the Amalgam Universe at number 5. And at number 4 is Weird World. I feel like there's no need to explain why this one ended up on the list given the title. But weirdly enough, Weird World isn't actually that weird, all things considered. Weird enough to make it on this list, but I still feel like they had an opportunity to make a world so weird that they clinched the number 1 spot on this list. But still, it's a weird one. I am tired of saying that word. It's a Marvel universe that features magical creatures like goblins, dragons, and zombies. And there are just perpetual battles going on there between gods representing dark and light. It's hard to tell how it ties in with Marvel superheroes, so in the context of the Marvel Multiverse, it's definitely weird and a bit out of place, but it also just seems like a typical medieval fantasy landscape to me. It's almost weirder that this world doesn't really match its name, but I guess weird is weird. At number 3 is the Marvel Apes universe. Featured in the Marvel Apes miniseries, this alternate universe naturally features ape people versions of all the heroes we know and love, and everybody else for that matter. Basically, apes roam the earth, and even the Avengers have changed their name to suit the environment, being widely known as the Ape-Vengers. But if you think that's weird, it gets even more bizarre when we learn that Captain America is secretly a vampire who drinks the blood of his enemies. And then eventually it's further revealed that it was never Captain America in the first place, but a Nazi vampire who shapeshifted into Cap years ago after drinking his blood. I honestly don't know what the writers were thinking with this one, but at least it was able to rank high on this list. That's one thing it's got going for itself. At number 2 is the universe where Aunt May is bitten by the radioactive spider. In a short feature story of What If issue 23, we see what it would be like if Aunt May were to take up the mantle of Spider-Man with web-slinging powers and all. And the result is something so bizarre that I've already covered this universe on at least 3 other lists so far. It just stands out. And not necessarily for the right reasons, always. I think they sort of lose me when Aunt May starts using the dough from a bread loaf she's baking as a weapon, but this is one of the best examples of the fun that writers can have with the concept of a multiverse, where basically anything goes as long as it's set in another universe, which is kind of a blessing and a curse for Marvel all at the same time. At least Spider-May is paired up against Leapfrog, because if she successfully took down any truly reputable villain with her dough lasso, I think I'd have lost a decent chunk of respect for Marvel, if I'm being completely honest. At number 1 is the Larval Earth universe. In this world, all the Marvel heroes and villains alike have evolved into cute and cuddly animals, with characters like Daredevil, Nick Fury, and the Agents of Sheep. There's no wonder why this universe exists as a one-off, although it may have been just weird enough that it went full circle and became kind of iconic. I mean, the ironically popular Spider-Ham, aka Peter Porker, also comes out of this alternate universe, so there's that. Larval Earth is probably the weirdest universe to actually be considered part of the official Marvel canon, and with villains like Kangaroo the Conqueror, Sand Manatee, and Magsquito, readers are left wondering whether or not this whole multiverse concept is going too far. But personally, I think the odd, fun, and weird universe never hurt nobody. I mean, who could be mad at Black Panda? I mean, that's not much of a stretch considering he's normally named after an animal, right?